A memory of fire and damnation unfolds. A towering, demonic figure declares that another has fallen into hell by his design. After saving a woman, they were ensnared in a trap, their souls clashing. The demon lord proclaims that the defeated soul will now be used to reincarnate and alter the course of a faltering world. The fiery vision gives way to a cluttered room where a young man in a school uniform slams his hands on a desk, shouting in frustration at the memory of that demon lord. An older man, his father, stands nearby amidst the mess, seemingly unbothered by the outburst. He sighs, picking up a brush. He laments having to reuse old-school printouts to create Shikigami talismans, as there seems to be no proper onmyoji office in this world. His thoughts drift to his meager dinner the previous night, a hamburger steak he couldn't even bring himself to eat. His father's voice breaks his concentration, excitedly presenting a new acquisition. The young man dismisses it as more junk, but his father snatches up the ornate, claw-like object, insisting it's a priceless relic, a secret art from the main Kumo family house. He lets out another weary sigh, his mind returning to his fate. He was sent to hell by the demon lord's trickery. Unable to ascend to heaven as he is, he was told he must reincarnate and accumulate good deeds. As his brush glides across the paper, forming intricate symbols, he reflects that this modern era isn't so different from his past life, with the notable exception that onmyoji are still active here. He finishes the fourth talisman, noting his growing hunger as he prepares the fifth. His father suddenly speaks, asking what's wrong. The older man observes his son's work, remarking on the fact that he's creating Shikigami with such shoddy tools. The young man stares at the completed talismans lined up before him. He feels a profound sense of inadequacy, believing he wasn't granted any special power or aura from the curse as he'd hoped. If he cannot even purify the lingering resentment in his own soul, he thinks that he truly is nothing. In a sudden burst of passion, his father snaps the brush in his hand. He declares that he refuses to let his son be reincarnated into a rundown apartment with a good-for-nothing father. Startled, the young man replies that his preparations are complete. Tossing the broken pieces aside, the father wraps a firm arm around his son's shoulders, his expression alight with purpose. "All right, let's go, Kazuki," he booms. The people are seeking help from the Kumo Noriyasu onmyoji office. He and his son, Kazuki, stood before their clients, an elderly woman leaning on a staff and a solemn young woman in a kimono. They had been summoned to deal with a fearsome creature known as a Ushioni. The elderly woman recounted the horror, describing how a giant, rock-like beast had rampaged through their village, devouring both the old and the young. The younger woman listened with a pained expression while Kazuki absorbed the grim details. With tears welling in her eyes, her young companion pleaded for their help, explaining that only she and the old woman remained. Kumo Noriyasu confidently accepted the job, declaring they would handle the Ushioni's subjugation. Kazuki, holding a talisman, affirmed his readiness. He then stepped forward, unleashing a flurry of paper talismans. Chanting an incantation for divination, he commanded his Shikigami to scatter and urgently locate the Ushioni. As his paper creation searched, Kazuki explained that his family possessed ancient texts from the Heian period describing the Ushioni. It was known as a creature with an ox's head and a demon's body that appeared near rivers and seashores to devour people. His Shikigami suddenly converged on a single tree in the distance. He announced that he had found it, but the young woman noted with confusion that she could not sense any demonic aura from that direction. Despite her doubts, he confirmed the Ushioni had been located, startling the elderly woman. He told the group to follow him, as they only needed to cross a river and walk a short distance. They arrived at a clearing where a lone camellia tree stood. Kumo Noriyasu excitedly declared this to be the Ushioni's transformed shape and prepared to unleash the power of his clan. Kazuki, however, sharply ordered him to stand down. His father was taken aback, demanding to know why. Kazuki insisted that if anything should happen, his father should leave the mountain with their clients. He would handle the rest. He then turned his full attention to the camellia tree, stepping forward alone. He announced to the silent clearing that he would now subdue it, as his father and the two women watched from a safe distance. He begins the ritual, hands outstretched as he chants an incantation. He calls upon the principles of yin and yang, commanding the celestial army to form a barrier and beseeching his Shikigami to manifest and lend him his power. As he chants, the onlookers react with alarm. His father's face contorts in shock, while the young woman covers her mouth in fear and the elderly woman watches with a grim, unreadable expression. His spell takes effect, and the ground erupts before them. A colossal, bull-headed creature bursts forth, its muscular form towering over the small group, a crude club held in its massive fist. The sheer presence of the beast stuns Kazuki's father, who exclaims at its immense power. He, however, remains composed, observing the creature and calmly acknowledging that this is indeed the Ushioni. Before anyone can act, the creature's form begins to waver. It throws its head back as its body dissolves into particles of light, seemingly vanishing on its own. The light fades, leaving the clearing empty once more. His father, bewildered, asks if it is over. Kazuki simply affirms that it is. He then turns to explain the situation, stating that while it was an Ushioni, it was actually a corrupted mountain deity, a guardian spirit residing in the camellia tree. He tells the elderly woman that it was never an evil being, prompting a shocked outburst from his father for addressing the client so directly. Ignoring his father, he reveals the true nature of their predicament. He presents a small, feathered dart, explaining that a weak onmyoji was used to provoke the yokai, a deliberate act to lure a more capable exorcist to this very spot. His gaze falls upon the elderly woman, his accusation sharp and direct. He confronts her, identifying her not as a simple villager, but as a Yamabushi. Her face darkens under the weight of his words. The accusation triggers a violent transformation. The Yamabushi sheds her human guise, revealing a monstrous, lion-like form. She lunges not at Kazuki, but at the reformed Ushioni, striking it with immense force as the others are thrown back by the shockwave of the attack. He watched as the Ushioni's blow sent the Yamabushi flying. Her face contorted with rage, she snarled, demanding to know how the boy could have possibly understood. He calmly explained that the mountain deity was, in fact, the goddess Izanami in her final form. He continued, revealing that the cursed Izanami had vowed to kill 1,000 people a day and, to fulfill this, had scattered 10,000 cursed bodies. He then told his father not to take out his marital frustrations on others. Meanwhile, the Yamabushi renewed her assault on the Ushioni. Enraged by his words, the Yamabushi let out a furious roar, screaming at the boy to be silent. She ignored the boy and his companions, leaping high into the air and bringing her weapon down with immense force upon the Ushioni. Kazuki and the young woman could only watch. The blow sent her bouncing off the creature's muscular back, but she quickly regained her footing, landing squarely on the Ushioni's head. Seeing his chance, Kazuki sprinted forward. Leaping into the air, he invoked a powerful spell, calling out the names Kaya and Meijin as energy swirled around him. From his hands, a concentrated sphere of light shot forth, aimed directly at the Yamabushi perched atop the colossal beast. The sphere detonated upon impact, creating a blinding explosion. The Yamabushi was thrown back by the force of the blast, grunting in surprise. She is struck squarely by the spiritual blast, her staff deflecting some of the force, but not enough to prevent the impact. The attack originated from Kazuki, who now stands atop the Ushioni's head. He invokes a Simon, a 5-pointed star of protection, intercepting the Yamabushi's path. He stands firm upon the deity's massive form, directly confronting the airborne ascetic. The force of his intervention sends her hurtling backward, crashing hard against the ground. Rising from the dust, her features contort into a monstrous sneer. She addresses the boy, questioning why he would side with the Ushioni, a creature that devours humans. She then asks him what truly separates the two of them. She continues her taunt, declaring that this Ushioni is not like him. With a sharp gesture, she claims to understand him completely, right down to the very texture of the power that lies deep within his spirit. Her grin widens as she poses a chilling question, her voice dripping with insinuation. Could he perhaps also be a man-eater? The accusation strikes Kazuki with the force of a physical blow. His eyes widen in horror, sweat beading on his brow as her words echo in his mind. She presses her advantage, asking if he truly doubts what she is saying. In response to his turmoil, a dark, blood-red energy erupts from his hand, coating his weapon. The Yamabushi observes this transformation as he prepares himself, his stance resolute despite his inner conflict. The power coalesces around his staff, transforming into a swirling vortex of violent, crimson energy. He stands poised atop the mountain deity, a figure of immense and terrible power. His body contorts under the strain of the dark power. A single malevolent red eye glares from the shadows above as his face twists into a demonic snarl, teeth bared and claws extended. The transformation completes with a burst of crimson and black energy. He lets out a terrified scream, flailing as the chaotic power erupts from the ground and engulfs him completely. As this uncontrolled power surges, a new figure observes from the darkness. Holding a paper or talisman covered in intricate symbols, he calmly states his disdain for such malevolence, declaring that he despises sin. He then reveals his weapon, a massive, ornate polearm with a wickedly sharp blade, its form radiating power against a crimson backdrop. With a swift, unseen motion, the newcomer unleashes a devastating attack. A blinding flash of light and dark energy consumes the monstrous form, shattering the ground in its path. The force of the blast tears through the transformed boy. The exorcist coolly remarks that he will handle this with just 1/10 of his karmic fire, as the Ushioni watches in stunned silence. His first target neutralized, the exorcist immediately turns his attention to the colossal beast, launching himself through the air toward the Ushioni. He moves with blinding speed, striking the Ushioni before spinning around to deliver a powerful, swirling blow to the still reeling, transformed Kazuki. Landing a final decisive strike that sends the boy flying, the exorcist identifies his technique with cold precision. Kagyo no Ho. A powerful force erupts, sending the elderly woman, known as Yamabushi, skidding violently across the dusty ground. Crouching in the aftermath, she cries out in agony as her left hand begins to blacken and disintegrate, dissolving into wisps of dark energy. Her pained gaze lifts from her dissolving limb to the figure standing calmly before her. The exorcist addresses the mountain deity, explaining that he has branded her with his own spirit. He states that his Shikigami can now sense her, and if she despises them, her only option is to leave Japan. With a snarl, her face partially decayed, she retorts that while he may be able to kill her, she will not allow him to do so. She declares that the strong are the ones who win, and the weak are the ones who lose, a final, defiant proclamation to the impassive exorcist. In response, he unleashes another wave of power, blasting her backward into the dense forest. With the immediate threat dispatched, the exorcist turns his attention to a new presence. A colossal, white, fluffy creature that rises from the earth with a silent, open-mouthed roar. Watching from a safe distance, Kamo Noriyasu and the young woman are rendered speechless, their expressions a mixture of shock and awe. The exorcist calmly observes his own hand as the last remnants of dark energy flake away, transforming into pure, clean droplets. He recognizes the phenomenon, purification. He stood alone in the clearing, the last wisps of purified energy dissolving around him. He called out to the demon lord, asking if this display was sufficient. Before he could receive an answer, a man in priestly robes rushed towards him, calling out his name, Itsuki. The young exorcist turned his head slightly at the sound. The man, Kamo Noriyasu, immediately began to question him, demanding to know why he hadn't delivered the final blow. He insisted that Itsuki still had plenty of curse power remaining. Itsuki casually replied that he had simply run out of paper talismans, a response that left Noriyasu utterly bewildered. He elaborated with growing frustration, revealing that he had been forced to use a handout from his middle school to create the Shikigami. Even after tearing it, he could only make 5, which was the absolute limit of his curse power and far from enough to launch a proper assault. With a stern look, he demanded that Noriyasu ask his father to buy him more paper. As Noriyasu stammered, Itsuki's attention shifted, and he asked about the young woman they had encountered. They found her standing alone on a path deeper in the woods. She appeared startled, her eyes wide with fear as they approached. He began to question her directly, stating that by following them into the mountain, she had forfeited any right to refuse. He assured her she would have a chance to explain herself, but insisted she answer his questions truthfully. The young woman gave a slight, silent nod of agreement. As they proceeded along the path, he observed that her appearance did not match the known features of the Yamaheim, an old woman with white hair and a massive sickle. He demanded to know who she truly was. She turned back, explaining that she was a descendant of the Yamaheim, one who carries her bloodline. Her words hung in the air as the exorcist's great blade stood planted in the earth nearby. She clarified the nature of her lineage. One becomes a Yamaheim by taking a life with their own hands. He processed this revelation, understanding that she must be the girl from before the transformation into the Yamaheim. He then asked what became of her father and mother. A shadow of sorrow crossed her face at the question. He listens intently as the young woman finally answers his question about her parents. She explains that her human father, who had created her, was devoured by her grandmother. As tears streamed down her face, she continues her tragic tale. Her mother, who had urged her to eat her father, was then killed by the grandmother for this act of defiance. The memory is vivid and horrifying. Her grandmother, transformed into a monstrous being with a maw of razor-sharp teeth, stood over her bloodied father. The creature declared that since the girl had partaken of her father's flesh, she would now assist her. Returning to the present, Noriyasu argues that the girl should not be punished. He deduces that she was merely a tool for the Yamaheim's escape and is now trapped in a cycle of consuming others to survive. The girl lowers her head, seemingly resigned, as Itsuki considers their conclusion. He then turns to the girl, presenting her with an alternative. He offers to make her his Shikigami, a path that would allow her to continue living as a person without the need to consume others. He asks if she is willing to accept the cost, subordination. With tears welling in her eyes, she looks down and quietly agrees, pledging her obedience. With her consent, Itsuki begins the binding ritual, explaining that it will alter her destiny as a Yamaheim. He declares that as a Shikigami, she will live without regret. He proclaims that his heart is his master and his body his servant, and if she truly submits to his will, she will become his god. He then recites the binding command. A wave of power radiates from him, enveloping them both. Fragments of her past flash around them. The monstrous form of her father, a joyful moment from her childhood, an image of her as an infant, as she sits calmly, accepting the change. A single tear traces a path down her cheek. She realizes that if he is the one to guide her, she is willing to lose everything she has ever been. The light subsides, and Itsuki casually announces the ritual is complete. From today on, you're my Shikigami, he states, before noticing her expression and asking what's wrong. The girl looks back at him, bewildered by his sudden change in demeanor. He explains to the bewildered girl that while nothing has fundamentally changed, becoming a Shikigami means she no longer needs to be bound by her memories or instincts. He states plainly that as an Ushioni, her new purpose is simply to obey him as part of their deal. He then softens his tone, patting her on the head and telling her that from now on, she should think of him as family. The girl looks up, startled by the unexpected warmth in his words. She whispers the word, family, her eyes wide with disbelief and a faint blush coloring her cheeks. Seeing her reaction, Itsuki asks what's wrong, adding that she should do her best to avoid becoming a mountain offering. In response, she bows deeply, a bright, genuine smile on her face. She formally states that she is inexperienced but asks for his guidance, accepting her new role. Her earnest and formal acceptance leaves him utterly perplexed. He remains flustered, gesturing in confusion as she holds her deep bow in the middle of the forest clearing. Meanwhile, observing from a distance, Kamo Noriyasu chuckles in amusement. Kazuki, however, looks on with a stern expression, warning Kamo that his father will be genuinely angry. He clutches his head in frustration, lamenting his situation. He is the demon lord, yet all he has done is purify his soul, and now he feels burdened with this unexpected turn of events. Rejoining the others, Kazuki declares the matter settled, marking a great achievement for the Kinto family. He announces that they will all return home as a family, which brings a smile to the young woman's face. Itsuki looks on, acknowledging to himself that this will be a long journey. As they begin to walk, Kamo Noriyasu cheerfully remarks that a lively atmosphere is certainly preferable to falling into hell a second time, adding that this new path will allow her to atone. He walked behind the others, a look of unease on his face as he observed the strange new dynamic. At the front, Itsuki strode forward with a confident smirk, the young woman keeping pace beside him with a gentle smile. As they walked, Itsuki spoke quietly, his words directed at the massive, spectral form of the demon lord towering behind him. Just watch me, Emma. In a quiet neighborhood, a traditional Japanese house stands amidst lush greenery, its tiled roof a stark silhouette against the pale sky. Inside, a young woman in a floral kimono kneels before a small altar. A stick of incense burns beside a framed photograph as she gently adjusts a ribbon in her long, dark hair, a soft smile on her face. She remembered a happier time. Her eyes closed as she recalled a friend with short hair, cheerfully fixing the same ornament, while her mother watched over them both with a gentle, loving expression. Returning to the present, she addresses the photograph, her voice soft. She tells her mother and father that her preparations are now complete. With her respects paid, she walks silently down a hallway, her thoughts turning to an unknown person who, she muses, finished the task for her. Elsewhere, the quiet is shattered by a sharp crackle of energy. A young exorcist in ornate robes brandishes a thorny staff, unleashing a wave of power. He leaps into the fray, shouting a command, Meijin, as he descends upon a horde of grotesque, chittering demons. In the shadows behind them, a colossal, horned figure looms. His attack tears through the demonic ranks, carving a path of destruction. He lands firmly amidst the dissipating energy, weapon at the ready. But his momentary victory is cut short. The exorcist's eyes widen in shock and agony as a black, spidery appendage violently erupts from his chest. The true attacker is revealed, the colossal demon lord, holding a small, spider-like creature in its palm. Mortally wounded, the exorcist collapses, weakly calling out for his master. He jolts awake in his bed, eyes wide with terror, a single name escaping his lips. Master. The lingering fear subsides as he clutches his head, realizing it was only a dream. Outside, rain streaks down the tiled roof of the house. His thoughts are interrupted by the sound of his door sliding open. A young woman in a kimono, his shikigami, peeks in and calls out to him, announcing that breakfast is ready. She presents him with a simple but plentiful breakfast spread. She apologizes for the simple meal, but he thanks her, remarking that it looks delicious. She asks if he would have preferred more, but he quickly dismisses the idea, insisting that he isn't used to being waited on. Later, after the subjugation of the mountain deity, he reflects on how she became his shikigami. He wonders how she has been able to continuously send him her ki, ever since she became attached to him. He recalls the circumstances. She was born as a shikigami from the vengeful spirit of the Ashioni. Because of this origin, they cannot be separated. If they were to part, there's a possibility that she would revert to her demonic form. This memory brings back a heated argument. He had shouted at his master, questioning why he had to live with a girl who was like a precious gem. He then calmly asked her, Itsuki, to live with him in his large residence. She agreed with a cheerful yes. As his father figure walked away, he mused that the two of them were alike, and that it was a bad idea to pour water on a young man's passion. He recalls that on her first day, he told her she didn't have to cook, but she wouldn't listen. He remembers her looking at him with a happy expression, which he found lovely. He then watched her attempt to cook, simply adding water to a pot without any effort. When he casually requested curry for dinner, she went to the kitchen and began kneading wheat flour. The result was a plate of curry, which she presented to him with a proud smile. She offers him another bowl of rice with a gentle smile, asking if he'd like a refill. Startled by the gesture, he stammers, taken aback. After finishing his meal, he puts his hands together in thanks and announces it's time to discuss the future. He has decided, he says, to become a formal Amayoji. She looks at him inquisitively, repeating the word formal. He confirms her question, a bead of sweat on his temple. He admits that while it feels a bit awkward, his true intention is to start performing exorcisms and severing the threads of souls as soon as he can. To accomplish that, he continues, looking at her directly. The first thing he needs is a new shikigami. Her expression falls at his words. He explains that the Ashioni, while powerful, is simply too large to be used for requests that take place indoors. She looks up at him, her voice small, and asks if this means she is of no use. He quickly clarifies that he did bestow divine power upon her, so she should possess a certain amount of strength. She asks if she can fight, her thoughts drifting to a memory of the old Yamabushi, resolving that she must not forget her. In response, she rises from her seat with sudden determination. He watches, startled, as a powerful aura begins to emanate from her. An ornate, bladed polearm materializes in her hands, swirling with divine energy. He stares in utter shock. It is known that the goddess Izanami possesses a heavenly spear, and the old woman of Yamatsu Hirasaka was but a splinter of that goddess. Having inherited the old woman's nature, the girl, too, is a part of Izanami. She holds the divine weapon with a steady gaze. He realizes that while she is a Shikigami, she is far too powerful to be treated as a mere servant. It would be wrong to think of simply using her. She looks at him, her cheeks slightly flushed, and stammers. She tells him that rather than being his Shikigami, she would prefer to live with him as part of his family. She looked at him, a hint of disbelief in her eyes, and asked if he was serious. Itsuki, his attention fixed on his phone, confirmed that a candidate for his new Shikigami had already been decided. He elaborated that his target was the Yatagarasu, a divine, three-legged crow. Its habitat was known to be somewhat restricted, located in the Yoshinogun district of Nara. She listened quietly before telling him not to feel sorry, as she was always causing him trouble. He simply replied that it was fine. With a gentle smile, she then declared that he was her family. His thoughts, however, drifted to more practical matters as he ate an onigiri. He tallied his expenses, taxi fare, the cost of acquiring the Yatagarasu, training equipment, and daily food costs. The funds came from a large inheritance left by his grandfather, but he still felt a pang of guilt using them. As he worried, she poured a drink, thinking to herself that without her, he would surely be lost. After all, if she were gone, he would have nothing left to abandon. Later, in a forest clearing, he held up a Shikigami talisman. He mused that while it was meant for offerings, it should have enough power to get the Yatagarasu's attention. A small paper familiar then darted away from his foot. The talisman worked immediately. A massive black crow with 3 legs burst from the trees, diving towards them with its talons extended. Both Itsuki and the girl stared up in alarm. In an instant, the creature snatched the girl into the air. Itsuki cried out her name, Aoi. He roared at the crow to let her go as it began to fly away with her. He watched in horror, clutching a talisman, but before he could react, Aoi was engulfed in a blinding flash of light, breaking free from the crow's grasp and illuminating the forest below. The light subsided to reveal Aoi hovering in the air, now wielding a massive, ornate scythe. Stunned, Itsuki could only stare and wonder what that light was, questioning if it had been thunder. As she holds the divine weapon, Itsuki urgently commands her to stop, declaring that her temperament is ill-suited for combat. He then recites an incantation, comparing the sight of her with the scythe to people seeing a bowman on a mountain and calling it a mountain burning. Despite his command, she swings the massive scythe, striking the Yatagarasu with immense force. Stunned by her action, he stumbles back, crying out her name in shock. He watches as Aoi stares at her hands in disbelief, the wounded Yatagarasu leading its flock in a swift retreat. As the divine crows vanish into the sky, he reaches for her, his expression a mixture of concern and astonishment. In the wake of their departure, the two of them discover the nest the crows abandoned. It is filled with glittering treasures the birds had collected, a golden jewel, a wedding ring, a pet's collar, and even Aoi's own hair ornament. Looking over the collection, Aoi apologizes, believing she has ruined his plan to make the Yatagarasu his Shikigami. He reassures her, commenting that the birds were simply building a harem with stolen trinkets, and states that his objective has been achieved. He then encourages her to look deeper into the nest. Following his direction, she sees 5 large eggs nestled within the treasures. He points out that the Yatagarasu, the flock's leader, abandoned them without a second thought. He then reveals his new intention, to claim one of the eggs and raise it as a Shikigami. While he focuses on the eggs, she retrieves her own lost hair ornament from the nest. A small, pleased smile crosses her face as she fastens it back into her hair, though a slight blush hints at her lingering surprise from the battle. Sometime later, back at his residence, Itsuki sits on the floor before a laptop. He carefully adjusts a webcam, preparing to record or stream. As he works, Aoi approaches and asks if he's becoming a YouTuber. He confirms her suspicion, explaining that he's advertising his services. In the competitive society of Onmyoji, he reasons one must build a reputation early to secure good work. He explains his strategy with a confident smile. The videos documenting the yokai's incubation are gaining traction, and he plans to continue filming the creatures as they grow. Aoi listens, her expression one of pure delight at the thought of people all over the world watching over the eggs. Her innocent joy catches him off guard, a wave of guilt washing over him as he realizes he probably shouldn't have revealed his self-serving motives. 20 days later, their vigil pays off. As they watch the incubator, Aoi gasps, pointing out movement. A sharp crack appears on the surface of an egg, a sign that the wait is nearly over. The initial crack gives way as the shells break apart completely. From within, 5 small, dark, bird-like chicks emerge, blinking in the new light and letting out their first chirps. As Aoi tenderly cares for the hatchlings, Itsuki explains their unique parentage, a mix of Yatagarasu and Hakitori. He observes that, aside from spiritual energy he provides, they seem just like ordinary chicks. The responsibility of their care establishes a new routine. While he and Aoi attend school, his father watches over the chicks, Feeling weary from the day, Itsuki heads for a bath, musing that he feels rather small for his age. He slides the bathroom door open only to find Aoi already inside, bathing with the chicks happily splashing around her. As he stammers in surprise, the chicks suddenly turn on him, their forms shifting into menacing, shadowy shapes as they screech defensively. Later, while checking his channel, a comment catches his eye. A viewer thanks him for his efforts and asks if the chicks have names. The question sparks a realization for Itsuki. Naming them is a crucial ceremony that will shape their very nature. He resolves to do it. He gathers the 5 chicks. Pointing to each in turn, he bestows upon them names tied to the 5 elements: Sarayu of wood, Suzaku of fire, Byako of metal, Jinbu of water, and Kuryu of earth. A month passes. As he and Aoi observe one of the growing crows, she remarks on the power of their new names. Itsuki holds the small creature, pondering which of the 5 will ultimately prove to be the most powerful. He watched as the 5 Yatagarasu chicks, full of chaotic energy, swarmed around Aoi in her large, beastly form. While they were considered yokai, ancient records also spoke of the Yatagarasu as divine messengers, a sacred status that set them apart. This chaotic nature proved to be a problem when something splattered across his face. Wiping it away, he realized that taking them to the national exam would draw far too much attention. His first task, he decided, will be to train them to be obedient. The day of the Onmyoji national exam was fast approaching. A young man with a backpack arrives at a large, traditional building. A sign posted outside clearly marks the location, the second Onmyoji national examination venue. He joins a stream of other hopefuls heading toward the entrance. As he walks, another candidate, a man with a confident smirk, approaches him. The man explains that for the first exam's Quirce power measurement, only D-rank Onmyoji and above were advised to take the bus, scoffing at the idea of wasting money on a train ticket. He proudly declares himself a C-rank Onmyoji. The man continues, noting that while the minimum qualification is being a third-year middle school student, many with greater experience and Quirce power also participate. The national exam isn't just about passing. Rank is also assigned based on performance. A chart details the Onmyoji hierarchy, from F rank, capable of handling goblins and kobolds, up to the elite A rank, who face creatures like cyclopes and trolls. He muses that standing out too much can be a hassle, yet the allure of the success highway is strong. The dream is to become famous, swiftly exorcise yokai, and purify their lingering spirits. The young man, however, has a different plan. His tactic is to just barely scrape by and pass, keeping a low profile. As he contemplates this, a small charm falls from his bag. A girl in a school uniform notices, calling out that he dropped something. He turns to see 2 girls who appear to be twins, both in student uniforms. The one who called out, distinguished by a long side ponytail, smiles and thanks him as she returns the charm. She then asks if he is also there for the Onmyoji exam. When he confirms, she cheerfully suggests they all do their best. Her sister stands beside her, watching the exchange quietly. With a bright, genuine smile, he agrees. He thinks to himself that, at the very least, his partner seems to be an honest person. Inside the vast examination center, the candidates are directed to their designated halls. A large sign points the way toward the area marked East 1. Within the hall, rows of examinees sit silently. A stern man in a black suit stands before them and introduces himself as Goki Yashikuni, the vice proctor and supervisor for the Onmyoji national examination. He begins by issuing a stern warning to the assembled candidates. If any cheating is discovered, the perpetrator will be disqualified, their qualifications revoked, and they will be banned from taking the exam for 5 years. He urges them to refrain from any such dishonest acts. Continuing his explanation, he reveals the content of the second exam: the creation of talismans, or fujutsu. Specifically, the candidates must create guardian talismans using the provided Japanese paper and vermilion ink. He elaborates on the procedure. The exam will last 3 hours. In that time, they must create 6 talismans and then move to the practical exam venue. There, 3 of the 6 talismans they created will be randomly selected to be used in a practical skills test against 6 prepared shikigami. His tone grows more serious as he explains that the Onmyoji Association must recruit approximately 500 new members from their ranks each year. He clarifies the grim reality behind this number. It means that around 500 Onmyoji retire each year due to declining spiritual power. This attrition rate, he notes, is several times higher than that of the police or self-defense forces. His voice rises with intensity. The association, he declares, has no need for those who cannot even create a simple guardian talisman. He demands that they all approach this task with sharpened focus and determination. As the supervisor's speech concludes, Kazuki turns to a nearby candidate with a confident smile. He remarks that even with a simple flyer and some ink, his divine spirit could produce a decent talisman. He finds it puzzling, however, that the materials provided for the exam seem to be of such high quality, covering for any lack of power in the materials themselves. With the instructions delivered, the supervisor raises his hand and shouts for the second exam to begin. The sudden declaration startles Kazuki, who is now seated at a desk in the vast examination hall. He looks up, momentarily surprised. He quickly composes himself, picking up his brush. He reflects that creating 6 guardian talismans in just 3 hours is, for an ordinary person, a rather difficult task. He quickly discovers that sealing spiritual energy into paper for an extended duration is a far more delicate and difficult task than simply releasing it. While his training would make crafting a single, powerful talisman manageable, the current test is a different matter entirely. Beside him, another examinee is already sprawled on the floor in exhaustion. The sight of his collapsed peer is a stark reminder of the test's true nature. It is a trial of energy management. He realizes that pouring his full strength into each of the 6 talismans without a proper strategy would be a grave error. A more thoughtful approach is required. He pauses to assess his work. 3 talismans are already complete. A thought crosses his mind as he notes the 2.5 hours still remaining on the clock. If he can finish the rest flawlessly, he might just distinguish himself from the other candidates. His confidence swells as he finishes his work far ahead of schedule. With a smirk, he considers feigning difficulty on the final talisman, a small act of deception amidst the exhausted and struggling examinees surrounding him. Meanwhile, elsewhere, observers watch the exam unfold on a large screen. One of them notes with clear interest that the young man, Kazuki, has already completed all 6 of his talismans. Outside a traditional-looking establishment, 2 strange figures discuss the proceedings. A cat-like creature points out that, unlike the others, this particular examinee's talismans are visibly radiating spiritual power. Its companion, a small horned demon, dismisses it as a hollow display, remarking that such flashy newcomers appear every year only to fail. In a dimly lit establishment named the Onmyoji Bar Shigemoko, patrons watch the same broadcast. A man explains to his companion that the exam is essentially a public showcase, a poorly disguised recruitment event for influential figures to scout new talent. Intrigued, the woman leans in to get a better look, asking what kind of guardian talisman the boy is creating. Before he can answer, the broadcast shifts its focus to 2 other examinees, the highly touted twins from an elite family. The woman's attention is immediately captured by their cute appearance, and she wishes aloud that the broadcast would show more of them. Back in the examination hall, the allotted time has elapsed. Goki Yashikuni approaches Kazuki, who stands with a nervous energy. After confirming that the young man has finished, the supervisor directs him toward the practical testing area. He then reveals the nature of the practical test. The guardian talismans Kazuki crafted will be used to shield his salmon fillet from immense pressure. His score will be based on the maximum pressure and time the protection holds. Goki instructs him to choose his talismans and shake a dice cup. Taken aback, Kazuki questions if he's meant to protect a living creature, but the supervisor curtly clarifies it's just a fillet of fish, asking if that's an issue. He watches as the supervisor, Goki Yashikuni, announces the start of the endurance test for the first talisman. As the heavy press begins its descent, his small Yatagarasu companion, Jinbu, reminds him to channel the power of the 8 trigrams into the talisman to defend the salmon. The pressure gauge immediately begins to climb. The machine groans as the force increases exponentially. 1 ton, 3 tons, then 12 tons. Yashikuni realizes with a start what this means. With just a single talisman, the boy has already far surpassed the standard passing score for the exam. It reaches 50 tons, the absolute measurement limit of the press. The supervisor stares, astonished. The guardian talisman's color has shifted under the immense strain, but it shows no signs of tearing or damage. With a sudden hiss, the pressure is released. Kazuki turns to his companion with a smile, offering encouragement and promising a feast of forest goblins as a reward for its hard work. The little creature seems delighted by the offer. The small creature flutters happily as Kazuki and a stunned Yashikuni watch the press retract. Beneath the rising press, the salmon fillet sits perfectly intact, protected by the now-faded talisman. The result flashes across screens, drawing gasps from other examinees and patrons watching the broadcast from a bar. The score is unbelievable. 50 tons, held for 23 seconds. Yashikuni addresses him directly, explaining that the test's purpose is to gauge one's ability to create 6 functional seals within the time limit. Given the first result, he declares they will test the next talisman at the machine's 50-ton limit from the very start. He agrees, noting to himself that he's being thoroughly scrutinized. Holding up the next talisman, he gives Jinbu a simple instruction: do your best. The second test concludes with an even more shocking result. The talisman withstood 50 tons for over a minute, forcing the test to be halted because the press itself was overheating. The other examinees are aghast, one of them shouting that this must be an all-time record, something no student should be capable of achieving. He panics internally, realizing with a jolt that he is absolutely standing out. He wonders if he's just made himself a huge target. The exam's combat phase erupts in a chaos elsewhere. A massive, skeletal beast thrashes violently, its body impaled by large, cross-shaped stakes as other examinees, including Aoi, engage. Meanwhile, the observers watching the broadcast react with alarm. The woman cries out that there's been an accident, but the man next to her expresses disbelief that an apprentice could control such a massive shikigami. He decides he must watch this unfold. On their screen, the battle rages. Aoi and the exam supervisor, Goki Yashikuni, fend off a monstrous, single-eyed avian creature. The observer's attention snaps back to Kazuki, who is now being confronted by the supervisor on screen. The man calls him a show-off who loves the spotlight, while the woman worries, questioning what the exam official is doing. Suddenly, the image on their monitor dissolves into a flash of white light as the screen cracks. Stunned, the patrons can only stare at the dead screen, wondering what they just witnessed. Back in the arena, the cause of the disruption is revealed. A colossal, shadowy figure with burning white eyes has manifested, towering over the two twin examinees who stand frozen before its immense presence. This is the power unleashed by the third spirit talisman, the Demon Lord, its malevolent eyes glowing intensely. The Demon Lord unleashes a wave of pure, dark power. As the supervisor shields Aoi, Kazuki can only watch, his eyes wide with shock, as the overwhelming force rushes toward them. He is confronted by the exam supervisor, Goki Yashikuni, who declares that as a guardian spirit, his role is to protect those he is meant to protect. Yashikuni warns that if he provides a restriction, he will not be seen as an enemy. He roars back in defiance, his eyes wide with conviction. He proclaims that even if the very logic of the world is his opponent, he will fight it and not allow it to be lost. His declaration is punctuated by a colossal explosion of dark energy from the Demon Lord, overwhelming the arena. In a remote viewing room, bar patrons watch in shock as their monitor is consumed by static and blinding light. Sometime later, after the chaos has subsided, Kazuki stands before Goki Yashikuni and apologizes, explaining that he was forced to use his third guardian talisman. The supervisor glares down at him, stating that his results up to the second talisman were acceptable. However, he warns that causing trouble is an exception and that the final pass-fail results will be announced all at once later on. He looks up, a bead of sweat on his face, realizing the gravity of his situation. Nearby, the twin girls watch him with concern, while a distressed Aoi is gently led away. As they watch him go, one of the twins, Sarah, comments on him, noting that even with his first result, he isn't guaranteed to pass as the top seat. The other twin, Cheyenne, agrees. Sarah's expression softens slightly as she thinks to herself that he's just a nice person. In the background, Kazuki suddenly realizes he forgot to take his bento box with him. Inside a stately building, Goki Yashikuni reviews a document held by his colleague, Kasugi Yayoi. He remarks that it has been a long time since he heard the name Kazuki, noting that if one traces his lineage back, he is a descendant of the great Onmyoji, Abe no Saimai. His attention shifts to an office where the chief proctor, Goki Yashijiro, sits contemplating the same information. Yashijiro muses that Kazuki has passed the first stage and wonders what should be done. Yashikuni, standing nearby, questions his brother's hesitation. He argues passionately that while it is a shame his niece has failed, everything must be conducted with fairness. Yayoi, identified as a deputy proctor and formerly of the Goki family, calmly interjects, stating that fairness is not the issue at hand. She elaborates, explaining to Yashijiro that Itsuki is not a simple human whom Sarah and Cheyenne could hope to defeat. She presses him, asking about the true nature of his power that surpasses even the Goki family, admitting that she is concerned. Yashijiro reveals that the Goki family possesses the blood of Oni and Tengu, and that it's not unusual for those with monstrous roots, like the descendants of Abe no Saimai, to become Onmyoji. However, he concedes that this particular young man is someone they must watch carefully. His words do little to soothe Yashikuni, who demands to know how Itsuki's opponent for the third exam was already announced. He questions the wisdom of allowing Itsuki's true nature to be revealed so openly. Yayoi clarifies the situation. An exhibition match was held where Itsuki suddenly appeared and, with overwhelming power, defeated the second and third ranked contestants, Sarah and Cheyenne, who both carry the Goki bloodline. She then proposes a condition to Yashikuni. If Goki wins their match, she will recommend Itsuki for promotion to a higher rank. He considers her offer, his expression grim. He acknowledges that Sarah and Cheyenne seem to be at a disadvantage, but their defeat is not yet a certainty. Having made his decision, Yashikuni declares it will be a good experience and agrees. He instructs Yashijiro to explain the arrangement to Sarah and Cheyenne. Yashijiro accepts, stating he will relay the message to Itsuki, but voices his doubt, wondering if the boy will even accept the invitation. He listened as Kasugi Yayoi confirmed that Itsuki had been deliberately showcasing his power during the exam. She concluded that he would certainly not miss an opportunity to advance further, a sentiment with which Goki Yashijiro quietly agreed. As he spoke on another matter, his hands clasped together with a firm, resonant sound. He revealed to Yayoi that both Sarah and Cheyenne had returned with carp-shaped good luck charms from their exam, bringing their total to 6. Holding them up, he remarked that no matter how many they consumed, it was never enough. Meanwhile, at a park designated as the venue for the third stage of the National Onmyoji exam, the participants began to gather. An announcement declared that the third exam, a series of versus matches, would commence for the top 100 performers from the second stage. Sitting on a bench, Itsuki examined his box of protective talismans as Aoi sat beside him. She explained the rules. The 3 protective talismans from the second exam would function as their life force. To win, one must destroy 2 of the opponent's talismans, with the last one serving as a safety measure. Aoi's warning that he must assume his opponent will be fighting with full intent seemed to startle him. The stakes of the exhibition match, arranged by the Goki family, were immense. A victory would automatically certify Itsuki as a D-rank Onmyoji. Furthermore, as Goki Yashijiro held out the formal invitation, it was revealed that a win would also earn him a direct recommendation from the Goki family for the even higher C rank. His focus shifted as he noticed his opponents nearby. He hadn't realized he would be facing the twins again. As the time to enter the waiting area drew near, Itsuki glanced over at Sarah and Cheyenne with a look of surprise. Noticing his apprehension, Aoi presented him with a large, neatly wrapped bento box she had prepared, encouraging him to do his best. Her gesture immediately restored his confidence, and he gratefully declared he was ready to go. He shot to his feet, talismans in hand, and let out a booming laugh. With unwavering confidence, he called out, announcing the arrival of the Goki family's wise man. As Itsuki waited, a new challenger stepped forward, striking a dramatic pose. With a wide, confident grin, he loudly proclaimed himself to be a descendant of the legendary Abe no Saimai. In response to this grand declaration, Itsuki's expression remained utterly flat and unimpressed. The newcomer, seemingly agitated by the lack of reaction, leaned in close to Itsuki, shouting that words were unnecessary. Itsuki calmly countered, noting that the Tsuchimikado clan, who had claimed the name of Abe no Saimai since the Muromachi period, had their lineage severed decades ago. He asked how his opponent could possibly be a descendant, a question the other dismissed as obvious, wondering if Itsuki was simply a fool. He scoffed, declaring that one only needed to look at his overwhelming power and splendor to see the proof of his heritage. He derided Itsuki for needing to rely on observers and judges, unlike himself. If Itsuki still couldn't believe him, he would show him the proof directly. He warned him to watch closely, as this would be his only chance. He roared, reminding Itsuki that he was the one who said words were unnecessary. Now, he would present the very evidence of his lineage as a descendant of Abe no Saimai. With a guttural cry, he unleashed his spiritual energy, a dark aura swirling around him as he began his summoning. From a surge of power, a massive, eagle-like Shikigami materialized. He commanded Itsuki to behold the great Shikigami passed down through his family, declaring its powerful and majestic form to be the undeniable proof of his noble lineage. Itsuki watched the display with a deadpan expression, the small chicks perched on him equally unmoved. He mused aloud that if one were to boast of Abe no Saimai's lineage, a fox Shikigami would have been more fitting, before letting out a weary sigh. He dismisses his rival's skepticism, declaring that his eagles are far stronger than any fox and that a match will prove it. With that, he and his Yatagarasu chicks charge forward to begin the confrontation. The third trial officially commences, Itsuki versus the self-proclaimed Abe Saimai. Without hesitation, the Yatagarasu chicks unleash a furious combined assault, swarming their opponent in a chaotic blur of black feathers and overwhelming force, causing the rival to cry out in shock. The sheer impact of the attack sends the rival flying backward, slamming him hard into a chain-link fence which groans and buckles from the force. In an instant, the match is over. Itsuki is declared the victor. He stands calmly as his opponent is carried away, calling out for him to come back, while his victorious chicks settle upon his shoulders. After his decisive win, Aoi approaches him, her hands clasped in excitement as she exclaims how amazing he was. The Yatagarasu chicks flutter around him, chirping in celebration of their shared victory. She cheerfully offers him a bento box, suggesting they have lunch. A flustered Itsuki starts to agree, but one of the chicks interjects, reminding him that he needs to wait until after his exhibition match is over. Aoi's expression grows more earnest as she urges him not to lose. She explains that the Yatagarasu chicks had been sulking in his carry bag earlier, and she had to comfort them because they were so worried. To reassure them all, she pulls Itsuki and the chicks into a warm embrace, telling everyone to be good. Overwhelmed by the affection, Itsuki stammers that he's fine, his face buried in the hug. Unseen by the group, the twin exorcists, Sarah and Cheyenne, watch this tender moment from a distance, their expressions unreadable. Sarah remarks with a hint of disdain that he seems to have enough spare time to be flirting. Her sister, Cheyenne, responds coolly, telling her to simply finish the job quickly. As Sarah watched, her twin sister, Cheyenne, carefully tied the cords on her battle attire, her expression focused and determined. She noticed her sister's tension and commented on it, but Cheyenne deflected, stating that the true purpose of this match was to expose Itsuki's real nature. She reminded Sarah that this was what she had declared the day before. Her sister asked why that was so important. Cheyenne's gaze hardened as she replied that, more than anything, she wanted to win. For her, the matter was settled. She then declared her ultimate motivation, to make their father happy. Hearing this, Sarah simply agreed. As she finished tying the final knot, Cheyenne thought to herself. She suspected their father's true interest was in Itsuki, but she also remembered him watching her. She resolved that he would not simply use her for his own purposes. Sarah, in turn, reflected on her sister. People often mistook Cheyenne for being merely diligent, but Sarah knew the truth. She was stubborn, a trait she shared with their father. With their preparations complete, she turned to her twin. "Let's go, Cheyenne," Sarah announced, her voice firm. In response, the two sisters walked forward together, their expressions set with grim purpose as they headed towards the arena. They entered a large, fenced-in courtyard where the next stage was set. An official announced the start of the third trials exhibition match, Itsuki versus the twin exorcists, Sarah and Cheyenne. Across the marked circle, Itsuki stood ready, flanked by his 5 small shikigami. From the stands, Aoi watched the scene unfold, her hands clasped nervously. Beside her, another figure observed the arena with a stoic expression. With a sharp blast from a whistle, the proctor signals the start of the match. Without a moment's hesitation, the twin exorcists, Sarah and Cheyenne, act in perfect unison, unleashing a torrent of demonic fire and anabi directly at their opponent. Facing the inferno, Itsuki recalls that the Goki family's techniques have roots in both Onmyodo and Shijindo. Realizing this must be a feint, he commands his shikigami, Jinbu, to extinguish the demon fire. The small creature chirps in affirmation and prepares to counter. The small shikigami unleashes a massive wave of water that rushes toward the twins. Unfazed, one of the sisters declares that they won't be defeated so easily just because their opponents think they only use fire. They raise their staffs, preparing their next move. As the water surges forward, they counter with a powerful gust of wind, invoking the Tengu formation. The wind whips into a vortex, tearing through the ground and deflecting the aqueous assault. Itsuki watches the elemental clash, a sudden realization dawning on him. The demon fire was merely a setup. He understands now that their strategy was based on the principle of elemental counters. Earth muddies water. From the spectator area, Aoi watches the unfolding battle, her expression filled with worry for her master and his shikigami. A memory surfaces in Sarah's mind, an elderly woman reminding her that because their family is well known, they are expected to be proficient in their arts. The woman adds that Onmyoji are also required to engage in bargaining with Yukai. Her expression hardens with resolve. She thinks to herself that the Goki family's accumulated knowledge is nothing compared to the sheer audacity she and her sister possess. She vows that they will not be so easily overturned. The twins stand ready, their gazes locked on Itsuki. One of them formally addresses him by his full name, Kagami Itsuki, and declares that they are challenging him. Itsuki and his small shikigami stand firm, ready for the next phase of the battle. Within a large, open-air arena marked with a central circle, a modern drone hovers, its propellers whirring as it records the scene. On the ground, Kazuki stands with his small flock of Yatagarasu chicks, ready for the start of his examination. Meanwhile, in a darkened observation room, the proctors watch the feed. Kasugi Yayoi suggests they proceed with an exhibition match. Goki Yashijiro agrees, viewing it as a chance to determine if the boy is a great talent or a great evil that must be culled. In the arena, Kazuki's opponents are revealed, 2 identical young women with large, feathered wings, who stand ready for battle. He wastes no time, shouting out the names Kaya and Mirin as he brandishes his thorny staff. Below him, the 2 winged combatants brace themselves, anticipating his first move. They respond by launching into the air, their powerful wings carrying them swiftly upwards. From the ground, Kazuki watches their ascent, his own bird-like shikigami taking flight to engage them. He commands his flock to guard the airspace. High above, the winged twins coordinate their attack, their staves beginning to glow with concentrated energy. One of the twins identifies an opening in his formation and unleashes her power. The ground before Kazuki erupts in a violent explosion of rock and debris. He realizes with a start that her attack was faster than he anticipated. He won't be able to defend in time. His eyes widen in alarm as the destructive force surges toward him. At the last possible moment, a massive, stony shell bursts from the earth, intercepting the blast with a tremendous roar. One of the Yatagarasu chicks has transformed into a colossal, turtle-like guardian, shielding its master from harm. Watching from behind a fence, Aoi cries out in relief, shouting Jinbu and Master. The guardian's shell shatters under the immense pressure, but Kazuki steps away unharmed. He takes stock of his resources, noting that only one of his protective talismans remains. His opponents hover in the air, their expressions a mixture of shock and fury. One of them glares down at him, shouting for him to stop looking away. She looked down at her opponent, her expression stern. She reminded him that she had told him they would challenge him with pride. With that, she and her twin sister dove through the sky, descending upon Kazuki in a coordinated attack. He recognized the overwhelming presence emanating from them, akin to a demon lord, even without weapons. Reacting instantly, he commanded his shikigami, Byako, to fire a golden arrow, which struck a dark, spiky projectile hurtling towards him. In response, the winged girl dismissed the attack as ineffective. Undeterred, Kazuki called upon another of his companions, shouting for Shizuku to unleash a torrent of flames. The fiery blast was met mid-air by a volley of sharp, dark projectiles, causing a brilliant explosion as the attacks collided and neutralized each other. The winged twins gracefully evaded the fallout, their flight paths curving through the sky untouched by the blast. Suddenly, a colossal figure with the head of a bull loomed behind them. A massive hand shot out, enveloping one of the twins. The other stared in disbelief, realizing with shock that there was another shikigami she hadn't detected. The Ushioni's grip was absolute, its fingers completely enclosing the captured girl within its palm. With a surge of pressure, the giant hand began to squeeze. The Ushioni called out to the free twin, addressing her as Sarah. He warned her not to move, threatening to crush her sister, Cheyenne, if she did. From a distance, Kazuki affirmed the tactic to himself. If his opponent was a demon, he would simply crush it. Sarah, flustered, held one of Kazuki's small bird shikigami in her hands. Her face tightened with anger before settling into a look of silent, helpless frustration. She looks up at Kazuki, her sister still held captive in the Ushioni's massive hand. Addressing him by his full name, it's Suki Kazuki. She calls him a strange person, questioning if incomprehensible would be a more fitting word. He remains silent as she continues her assessment. She observes that for someone with such immense power, he seems to wield it without any clear principle or motivation, acting merely like a student aiming to become a state-on Myoji. Yet, she senses a greater, hidden purpose behind his actions. He finally responds, stating plainly that he simply doesn't want anyone to die in hell as an on-Myoji. He then asks her if that is truly such a grand objective. Her expression softens at his earnest reply. With a small smile, she declares that she will believe his words. As she makes this concession, the protective talismans surrounding her sister dissolve into nothing. The Ushioni's colossal hand opens, revealing her twin, Cheyenne, completely unharmed. A system notification confirms that the Goki sisters have 0 protective talismans remaining. With her sister freed, Sarah rushes forward, embracing her tightly in a heartfelt reunion. In the distance, Kazuki stands alone, having dismissed his giant shikigami. As the twins reunite, Aoi appears at Kazuki's side, questioning his decision not to press his advantage. He retorts, asking if she didn't believe his words either. Meanwhile, in the observation room, Goki Yashikuni spits out his drink in shock at the unexpected turn of events. Aoi blushes, flustered by his teasing remark. Across the field, Sarah watches them with a knowing smile, sensing a complicated dynamic unfolding between the two. Moments later, Sarah's gentle expression has vanished, replaced by pure fury. She glares at one of the small Yatagarasa chicks, which is being filmed by a drone, and yells that the bird is infuriated. The scene shifts to a tranquil park centered around a large water fountain. On a nearby bench, the two sisters, Sarah and Cheyenne, are seen in their school uniforms, sharing a quiet moment together. Elsewhere, a train screeches to a halt at an empty station platform, its doors ready to open. Inside, Kazuki and Aoi sit side by side in a quiet car, a noticeable distance between them. Aoi breaks the silence, her voice soft with concern, suggesting that she seems to have made him quite anxious. He turns to her, explaining that after the exhibition match, he had wanted to eat bento with her. He admits that while he did tell his family about her, it wasn't in the way she might be thinking, and he now feels irresponsible for his words. His expression hardens with introspection as he wonders what, exactly, he can do for Aoi as her family. He quickly becomes flustered, trying to take back his public declaration. Aoi, however, responds coolly that she doesn't know what he's referring to. He presses on, insisting that she is angry and that her efforts to serve him are not because she fears him or is worried about his reputation. She looks at him intently, stating that they need to face each other properly. To that end, she asks if he would like to go on a trip with her during the summer break. Now standing, he agrees, reflecting that he has only made her accommodate him and that he wanted to do something for her in return. He turns to her and asks, how about it? His demeanor shifts to one of bright excitement. He exclaims that of course they can go, as he has money for the trip. He explains that he earned a surplus by creating and selling protective charms, though he admits he was originally saving to fill the bento box of a broken press machine. Aboard the train, Aoi gives a small, contented nod, a gentle smile gracing her features as she closes her eyes. Her peaceful moment is interrupted as her eyes snap open. A voice calls out from the train platform, remarking on how the Yatagarasa chicks seem to have matured. With a soft thud, Aoi steps off the train and onto the platform. On Nakajima, a small, uninhabited island known as a cat paradise located 20 kilometers from the mainland, a chubby, striped cat dozes peacefully amidst the foliage. The cat awakens and stretches. This island is a popular tourist destination, famed for the many cats that live there, descendants of felines that once protected human crops from wild rats. In the distance, a ferry makes its way toward the shore. As the large vessel docks and visitors begin to disembark onto the pier, the cat lets out a long, loud meow. The sound draws the attention of a young couple. The woman remarks that it's cute, but her companion seems less impressed, pointing out that it's only a single cat. Shortly after, another pair arrives, a young man carrying their bags and a young woman in a white summer dress and a wide-brimmed hat. From behind a wall, the two-tailed cat watches their arrival intently. The two newcomers stop to look at a map of the cat paradise. The young man comments that the place seems different from the pictures. Nearby, the cat sits and stares at them with a grumpy expression. Its demeanor changes as it approaches the young woman, affectionately rubbing against her leg. Her companion points out that the creature has 2 tails, identifying it as a Nikomata, a type of cat yokai. He smiles, explaining that the Nikomata is likely reacting to her divine aura. He then adds that this must mean there are no other animals on the entire island. The woman gasps, her face flushing with surprise. Meanwhile, the first couple walks off, remarking that the nature is better than they expected and that the sea and mountains are beautiful. The young man watches them leave with a pensive expression. The young woman in white spends the day with the Nikomata. She holds it, plays with it using a foxtail grass, and runs joyfully alongside it through a field, all while her companion watches them with a warm, happy smile. She cheerfully waves goodbye to the two-tailed cat, promising to see it again. Her companion, Kazuki, calls out that it's time for them to return to their lodgings. The cat yokai watches them depart, its expression unreadable. It remains on the beach, its cry echoing across the sand as dusk settles over the island. Later that night, settled in their inn, Kazuki lies awake. He reflects on the nature of Nakomata, believing they are not inherently harmful creatures. In the next room, his companion is fast asleep. Outside, under the cloak of darkness, the Nakomata darts through the undergrowth. For some time, it had sensed a deeply unsettling presence on the island. His unease grows. He finds it deeply concerning that besides the yokai, all the other cats on the island seem to have disappeared. A sudden noise awakens his companion. She turns to see a dark, feline silhouette at her sliding paper door. The door rattles open, revealing a large, black cat in the doorway. It addresses her as the daytime cat person, its tone unsettling. It moves closer, its eyes gleaming menacingly in the dim light. As it places a heavy paw on her shoulder, she freezes, paralyzed with fear. Its intention, however, is not to harm her. The large cat turns and begins to gently groom a small, emaciated feline on the floor. The woman realizes the smaller creature is terribly weak, its life force nearly depleted. She understands instantly that she must share her own energy to save. Cradling the frail cat in her lap, she looks to the Nakomata, now back in its familiar striped form. She implores it to explain what is truly happening on the island. Her demand for answers was met not with words, but with a direct thought projected into her mind from the Nakomata. The yokai's intent became suddenly, shockingly clear, causing her to gasp in realization. The sheer gravity of the information left her stunned, her eyes wide with disbelief as she whispered, "It can't be." Before she could process it further, the Nakomata leaped into action, floating out of the open window. She cried out for it to wait. With no time to hesitate, she followed, leaping from the balcony as paper shikigami swirled around her feet, guiding her descent as she pursued the yokai through the night. The Nakomata led her far from the town, deep into the island's wilderness, finally stopping before the dark mouth of a cave. As she approached the entrance, a grim scene unfolded. The cave was filled with the island's cats, all looking weak and listless. In the gloom, a massive, unfamiliar tail twitched. The sight confirmed her fears. She realized with a jolt that this was the source, the entity that had been preying on the cats and draining their vitality. Stepping further inside revealed the full truth. A colossal, monstrous rat lay weakened on the cave floor. The Nakomata explained that all the cats had fought it together to protect their companion, and they had been searching for someone who could help them finish the fight. Moved by their loyalty, she didn't hesitate. "Of course," she declared, a staff crackling with energy materializing in her hand. She took a defensive stance, vowing to protect the cats while they regained their strength. As she stood guard, the Nakomata, emboldened by her support, charged forward with a fierce cry. With a monstrous rat before them, the woman lunged forward, striking the beast with her staff. The powerful blow landed squarely on the creature's head, staggering it. It retaliated instantly, its long tail whipping out and striking the Nakomata with brutal force. The woman could only watch in horror as the cat yokai was sent hurtling through the air. She rushed to another small, injured cat, cradling it protectively. She declared that she would lend her power as well, her small rabbit-like shikigami materializing beside her. In response, the Nakomata, having recovered and returned to its smaller form, landed before her outstretched hand. It crackled with spiritual energy, urging her to accept its power. A brilliant light enveloped them. When it faded, the Nakomata stood, transformed into a colossal, divine beast, its paws pinning the now-defeated monstrous rat to the cavern floor. With a final, ferocious roar, the divine cat unleashed a devastating blast of energy, completely obliterating the rat in a torrent of dark power. In the aftermath of the battle, a paper bird shikigami fluttered down into the cave, landing gently before the weakened cats who had survived the ordeal. Later, aboard a ferry departing the island, Kazuki held one of the rescued cats. He explained to his companion that the creature they fought was likely an old enemy, a giant rat yokai that the Nakomata had been battling. He suggested they take the cat under their care to monitor its condition, and she readily agreed. From the shore, the remaining cats of the island watched the boat depart. They murmured amongst themselves, relieved that the cats from the inn had been rescued, and that they could now leave this place in peace. The Nakomata, perched on the ferry's railing, let out a long, plaintive meow, a farewell to its kin. Beside it, the woman smiled gently, watching the island recede into the distance. He watches the ferry recede into the distance, a soft meow escaping him as the island fades from view. Later, settled indoors, Kazuki contemplates their new companion. He remarks that, just as he assigned names and roles to the Yatagarasu, it's necessary to give a name to their new shikigami as well. His companion clears her throat, interrupting his thoughts. She asks if she might be the one to name the creature, reasoning that since she will be its primary caretaker, it is only fitting. Kazuki appears taken aback by her sudden proposal. Beaming, she lifts the Nakomata and proudly announces its new name, Nikotaru. The cat itself seems less than thrilled with the choice, while Kazuki stares in disbelief. His own naming conventions for the Yatagarasu chicks, Jinbu, Siska, Sarayu, Bayako, and Kuryu, momentarily forgot. She then muses aloud that, speaking of names, the Ushioni still lacks one, and perhaps Ushu would be suitable. As night falls over a distant estate, she catches herself, muttering that she should probably give the matter more thought. The creature, known as the Tesso, is a being born of resentment. It is a yokai, transformed from a monk's grudge during the Heian period. The story begins with Emperor Shirakawa, who, lacking an heir, summoned the monk Reigo from Midara Temple. He commanded Reigo to pray for the birth of a son, promising to grant any wish upon the prayer's success. After 100 days of prayer, Reigo's efforts were rewarded with the birth of Prince Atsuhisa. For his reward, the monk requested an ordination platform for his temple, Midara. However, the powerful Enryakuji temple, a rival sect, vehemently opposed this. Fearing the influence of Enryakuji, Emperor Shirakawa went back on his word, flatly denying Reigo's request. With the promise broken, Reigo laid a curse upon the emperor and Enryakuji. He refused all food and drink, embarking on a path of self-destruction fueled by his grudge, ultimately starving himself to death. But his hatred did not die with him. Reigo was reborn as a great rat with teeth of iron. He led a swarm of 84,000 rats to descend upon Mount High, the home of Enryakuji, and wreak his vengeance. In the present day, on that very same Mount High, Itsuki explains that the Tesso's grudge has lingered since the Heian period. As he speaks, Kazuki interrupts, calling his name. Itsuki whirls around, annoyed, demanding to know if he was even listening. He is met by a cheerful young man holding a camera on a gimbal, who apologizes for the interruption. He introduces himself as Kaboin, an onmyoji YouTuber, here for a three-way collaboration. He excitedly states he wanted to feature the much-talked-about rookie, Kazuki Jian, since he could only secure the schedule for today. Itsuki fumes, realizing he's been completely sidelined. The revelation leaves Itsuki stunned into silence, while Kazuki stares with wide-eyed, almost starstruck excitement. Itsuki, flustered, grabs his head and insists that while he does want to make his family's name famous, the time isn't right. He points decisively at Kazuki, declaring him the main character for the day. Kazuki looks back, aghast, realizing with a sinking feeling that he won't be able to go to the third exam like this. He finds himself in the middle of filming preparations. Itsuki instructs him to coordinate their efforts, and Kazuki, with a confident smile, agrees to do his best to resolve the situation. His confidence wavers for a moment as an image of the monstrous Tesso flashes through his mind. He lets out a nervous cry, suddenly wondering if everything will truly be alright. This momentary panic is interrupted as Kaboin begins his broadcast, waving cheerfully into his camera. He announces to his audience, "Kaboin here. Today's project is, let's prank the Tesso of Mount High." He continues his explanation for the viewers, recounting how Mount High has been cursed by grudges for nearly 1,000 years, leading to personal harm for those who venture there. He even brings up a painful incident from the previous year, where a young schoolgirl was attacked by the Tesso. The YouTuber elaborates on the threat level, classifying the Tesso as F rank, on par with minor yokai like goblins and chimpanzees. He claims this represents only about 20% of their power, an amount a proper swordsman could handle. Itsuki, annoyed, interjects that this is precisely why they, the onmyoji, have been called in. He then turns to Itsuki to explain the strategy. Kaboin states that hunting down all 84,000 rats across the mountain one by one is unrealistic. The first step, he declares, is to gather them all together. Kaboin reveals the centerpiece of his plan, a large speaker. He explains they will use its sound to provoke and lure the rats from all over the mountain. The speaker blares a taunting chant about the superiority of Enryakuji Temple over Midara. Inspired by the plan, Kazuki enthusiastically names it Operation Lure and Annihilate the Tesso. Itsuki yells at him to stop, but Kaboin, smiling, remarks that the name is perfect for his audience. His enthusiasm is short-lived as he suddenly finds himself holding the large, vibrating speaker. He looks shocked as Kaboin explains that the Yatagarasu were supposed to carry it, but something came up. The reason for this predicament is revealed back at the Eikawa residence. Aoi is instructing the Yatagarasu chicks that they are on house-sitting duty. Back on the mountain, Kazuki looks utterly defeated while Kaboin laughs sheepishly, admitting he left them behind. He struggled with the heavy equipment, musing aloud with a weary smile that it would be much easier if he had a shikigami that could fly. Beside him, Kaboin chuckled in agreement, but their lightheartedness drew a furious shout from their companion, Itsuki, who demanded to know if they were joking. In response to the outburst, Kaboin grabbed Itsuki by his fur-lined collar, urging him to consider the situation from another perspective. Itsuki stared back, flustered, questioning if Kaboin was seriously trying to boss around this at Saimai. He continued his argument, pointing out that with the speaker aimed at the mountain, none of Itsuki's eagle shikigami could fly in the skies above. Therefore, he reasoned, only Itsuki was capable of handling this task. Itsuki was left speechless, gritting his teeth in frustration. As Itsuki fumed, Kazuki cheerfully interjected, telling him to think of it this way. A larger target is easier to hit. He suggested that the massive Yatagarasu was a far more suitable target than its smaller chicks. This logic seemed to horrify Itsuki, while Kaboin enthusiastically threw an arm around his shoulders in agreement. Defeated, Itsuki muttered that he couldn't argue with their reasoning. With a satisfied smile, Kaboin declared the matter settled, prompting Kazuki to cheekily add that they should leave it to this Abe Saimai. With the debate concluded, Itsuki summoned his shikigami. A colossal eagle, its neck adorned with a thick rope collar, descended from the sky, landing powerfully before him as he called out its name. Uwashi. The great bird landed with a gust of wind, but seemed hesitant. Itsuki sternly ordered it to get down and not to run away as it eyed the approaching Kazuki and Kaboin with apprehension. Now settled on the ground, the eagle received a reassuring pat from its master. Itsuki told it that the crows they were after today were just a bunch of brats. Watching them, Kazuki remarked that the Shikigami certainly resembled its master. Their destination loomed ahead, the vast, forested mountain range of Mount High. Within the safety of a protective ward cast by Itsuki, the group prepared for the next step. Hoisting the large speaker, Itsuki roared for his Shikigami to go, launching the device into the air for the great eagle to catch. His eagle Shikigami, Uwashi, successfully caught the speaker and now soars high above the mountainous terrain of Mount High, carrying its cargo towards the distant temple gate. As it flew, a dark presence stirred on the ground below. Tendrils of black, viscous energy began to writhe and coalesce on the forest floor, a manifestation of the mountain's corruption. This sudden eruption did not go unnoticed. Kaboin, still filming, watched as the shadows shot upwards into a massive, writhing pillar. Kazuki instructed him to stay close to the protective ward, and Kaboin readily agreed. The pillar of darkness lashed out, targeting the flying Shikigami. Itsuki shouted in alarm as the shadows swarmed Uowashi, recognizing it as a Shikigami from the Abe clan. The eagle cried out, struggling against the dark assault. Seeing his companion's Shikigami in peril, Kazuki turned to his own ally. He acknowledged that he had hoped to entrust this role to Abe Saimai, but the situation was too dire. He called out to Nikotoru, ordering the cat yokai to provide cover. In response to the command, Nikotoru transformed. The small cat swelled into a massive, ferocious beast with extended claws. With a roar, it lunged towards the shadowy mass, intercepting the attack aimed at the struggling eagle. The great cat yokai continued its assault, flinging smaller Shikigami from its own body at the dark entity, creating openings for Uowashi to maneuver. Despite their efforts, the corruption was overwhelming, and the group on the ground was engulfed in a swirling vortex of darkness. Kaboin, unfazed, continued to film, remarking on the great footage. Itsuki, however, looked on with grim annoyance, questioning Kaboin's sanity. Kazuki simply stated that as long as they stayed within the protective ward, they would be fine. Trapped within the maelstrom, Itsuki confronted Kazuki, demanding to know if this was some kind of revenge or a test. Kazuki replied that the rat extermination was just getting a little out of hand and asked Itsuki to stick with him a bit longer. Meanwhile, Kaboin maintained his focus, his expression hardening as he observed the chaos. He thought to himself that compared to Itsuki, he was not even 1/100th of a proper onmyoji. He holds up his phone, its screen capturing the frantic battle between the Shikigami high above. He realizes that even if they fail, he can still transmit the footage, a desperate plea for any other onmyoji to see and understand the threat they face. Hearing this, Itsuki voices his approval of the idea. Kazuki, however, is tense, questioning where the mountain rats are gathering. With a confident smirk, Itsuki dismisses his concern, declaring that they will simply open up the entire mountain. With the decision made, Kazuki gives the order, now, Ushioni. In an instant, the colossal beast smashes through the swirling dark miasma that had imprisoned them, shattering the vortex with raw power. It bursts free from the shadowy confines, its massive form now standing in direct opposition to the monstrous rat demon, Tesso. Tesso lets out a piercing, furious shriek. Watching the two behemoths face off, Kaboin is rendered completely speechless. The Ushioni answers with a deafening roar of its own. Kaboin can only stammer, trying to process the unbelievable scale of the confrontation. Towering over the trees, the bull-headed guardian is a true monster. The YouTuber realizes with a jolt that this is no longer an exorcism. It's a scene from a kaiju film. Its opponent is equally terrifying, a colossal beast of fur and fawn that blots out the mountainous horizon. Meanwhile, far from the titanic struggle, Aoi kneels in quiet contemplation before a gravestone in a large cemetery overlooking a body of water. Her moment of peace is broken by a distant, echoing roar. Startled, she looks up from her prayers, her expression suddenly filled with alarm. She stands amidst the stone monuments of the cemetery, her friend Sarah watching from a short distance. A sense of unease hangs in the air as Aoi calls out into the quiet expanse, questioning if her brother is there. The Ushioni unleashes its full power, landing a thunderous blow directly on the monstrous rat, Tesso. The impact explodes in a blinding flash of white energy. The force of the punch sends Tesso reeling, crashing heavily to the ground. From their vantage point, the rival exorcist throws a fist in the air, cheering that they've taken down the massive beast. It lies motionless, defeated amidst the swarm of smaller rats it once commanded, its massive form kicking up dust and debris. But as the Ushioni looks on, Tesso's body begins to dissolve, not into dust, but into a torrent of shadowy, wolf-like beasts that surge violently upwards. The shadow creatures swarm forward, their collective voice echoing with a single demand, that their hatred for the monks be appeased. They latch onto the Ushioni, tearing at its flesh. Watching the horrific scene, Kaboin realizes this was a contract made with the Emperor of Time. The shadowy maws continue their assault, screaming for their long-held resentment to be unleashed. Kazuki's expression hardens. He questions if it's truly acceptable to curse the world for eternity just because one has been wronged. A smirk spreads across his face as he scoffs at the very idea, finding it laughable. He manifests a bow of pure light, knocking an arrow as he takes aim. He concedes that their hatred is irrational, but declares that taking it out on the people of the present is simply absurd. His sudden intervention catches his companions off guard. The rival exorcist, his eyes wide with disbelief, calls out his name in a questioning tone. It's Suki. He roars for the spirits to repent in hell as he looses the arrow of pure light. The energy erupts from his bow, hurtling towards the swirling mass of darkness. The arrow strikes true, engulfing the vengeful spirits in a blinding flash. Their dark, clawed forms are torn apart, vaporizing into nothingness as the light purifies the very air, culminating in an explosion that rocks the landscape. From a safe distance, the eagle Shikigami Uowishi and the cat Yokai Nakomata watch as a brilliant pillar of light shoots into the sky, marking the site of the purification. The YouTuber, Caboine, captures the entire spectacle on his camera, a look of pure exhilaration on his face. Beside him, the rival exorcist Abe Saimai can only stare, his expression a mixture of shock and disbelief. Back at the epicenter, the spiritual energy around Kazuki's hand fades away into motes of light. A gentle, satisfied smile graces his lips. With the ancient curse finally broken, the three exorcists stand together in the now peaceful forest, the mountain looming serenely in the distance. Caboine is ecstatic, marveling that Kazuki managed to purify a centuries-old curse all by himself. He excitedly calls their On My OG collaboration a huge success, much to Abe Saimai's visible annoyance at being called commoner. Bowing deeply, Caboine thanks Kazuki for the collaboration, expressing his delight and asking him to be the main feature in their next video. He proudly announces that their video has already surpassed 200,000 views in just a few days, bringing a happy smile to Kazuki's face. As they walk down a set of stone stairs, Abe Saimai asks if Kazuki is heading straight home. Kazuki confirms, explaining that while he'll only see his mother briefly at the station, he has a promise to keep with his sister. Later, inside a taxi, Abe Saimai finally asks the question on his mind. How did Kazuki get so strong? Kazuki smiles and begins his story, explaining that it all started when he was in elementary school and went with his mother to learn about his younger brother's lineage. He explained to Abe Saimai that his mother dislikes his father, so he has to meet him secretly whenever he comes to Kyoto. He warned Saimai not to interfere with his personal affairs, but their conversation is cut short by a young girl's voice calling out for a brother. The voice belongs to a young girl with dark pigtails, who walks towards them with a cheerful wave, another girl with light, curly hair beside her. Kazuki utters her name, Ayaka, his expression, along with Saimai's, a mixture of surprise and confusion. Seeing their faces, Ayaka asks what's wrong. She then gestures to her companion, asking Kazuki if he remembers her. Ayaka reminds him that the girl, Haruna, was his classmate back in elementary school. His sister quickly corrects herself, clarifying that Haruna isn't a classmate, but a ghost. She admits the explanation is complicated and would take too long, promising to tell him everything later. She adds that he seems to be doing well, not all like someone who's just seen a spirit. Kazuki turns to Haruna, asking her to please look after his sister. As Haruna cheerfully agrees, Ayaka protests, telling her brother not to treat her like a child. Meanwhile, Abe Saimai watches the interaction before asking Kazuki if his father is well, observing that Kazuki himself seems to be in good spirits. The three of them, Kazuki, his sister Ayaka, and her friend Haruna, stand together for a moment. Watching them, Abe Saimai's face flushes with a deep blush, a single thought echoing in his mind. Cute. His gaze is fixed on Haruna, who beams with a radiant, sparkling smile. A triumphant thought crosses her mind. She's found a spirit that's just her type. Kazuki, noticing his companion's reaction, turns to the flustered Abe Saimai and casually introduces him, stating that he, too, is in the same line of work. He stood there, puzzled by his companion's sudden, flustered reaction. The man loudly introduced himself as Abe Saimai. In turn, Ayaka explained to Haruna that this was the person looking after her brother. With the brief reunion concluded, Kazuki and Abe Saimai headed for their train, leaving Ayaka and Haruna waving goodbye from the station concourse. As they waited on the platform, Kazuki bluntly asked Abe Saimai if he had a fetish for ghosts. His companion retorted that if Kazuki knew the ghost was that cute, he should have said so. Once seated on the train, Abe Saimai remarked on Kazuki's overwhelming life force, noting it was a magnet for yokai and required proper handling. He then conceded that he couldn't manage everything alone, admitting that Caboine was always helping him. He looked at Kazuki with a newfound respect, confessing that seeing him manage a Shikigami and care for his sister had forced him to reevaluate his opinion. Kazuki gazed out the window, musing that the current world was a comfortable place to live. The comment seemed to puzzle Abe Saimai, who questioned the oddly pretentious remark. A confident grin spread across Abe Saimai's face as he declared that he now officially recognized Kazuki as his rival. Kazuki smiled warmly, replying that it was an honor. The bullet train sped onward, carrying the newly acknowledged rivals toward their destination. Meanwhile, in a dark, web-choked lair, a monstrous spider with a humanoid torso surveyed its cocoon prey. A single thought echoed in the gloom. It's not enough. The spider yokai looks upon her collection of victims, their remains piled like discarded shells. She declares that it is not enough, and the taste is awful. One of her small spider children descends on a silk thread, agreeing with its mother's assessment. Her children, crawling upon the vast web, echo the sentiment. They cry out for more delicious food, insisting that they are growing and need to eat a lot. They eagerly wonder if their next meal, a special treat, will be arriving soon. She turns her gaze outward from the web, reassuring them with a soft affirmation. She murmurs that they only need to wait a little longer. Meanwhile, in a lavishly decorated office, the twins Sarah and Cheyenne stand before several authority figures, including Goki Yashikuni. One of the girls remarks that it is nearly time for them to reach Mama's nest. Within a reception room of the Onmyoji Association, Kasuga Yayoi informs Goki Yashijiro that the situation is extremely grave. She confirms the existence of a unified Onmyoji in Aomori Prefecture, where the root of the problem lies. She takes a sip from her cup, calmly stating that the Onmyoji Association is struggling with its deployments and shouldn't be so quick to ask for help. Yashijiro explains that, following her instructions, they dispatched nearly 100 casualties from the Aomori Unified B-Class Onmyoji and the Self-Defense Forces to a location known as the Shirakami Line in the mountains. He continues, his voice strained, revealing their opponents are newlywed yokai, couple who are extremely aggressive towards humans. He insists they must be eliminated quickly to protect the residents, but Yayoi cuts him off, demanding to know why they attacked the humans first. A heavy silence fills the room as Yashijiro sits, head bowed, unable to form an immediate response. Yayoi elaborates on the history. The yokai of the Shirakami Mountains and the local people had a long-standing balance. However, Aomori Prefecture built the Shirakami Line to develop the area, attempting to drive the yokai deeper into the mountains. She concludes that the couple is now attacking because their nest was sold and destroyed. She looks at him pointedly, asking if abandoning the new development was not considered. Flustered, Yashijiro shouts back that such a thing would be impossible. He slams his hands on the table, yelling that billions have already been invested and residents relocated. If they withdraw, the yokai couple will simply attack again. He declares that they must be exterminated. He points a trembling finger at her, reminding her that the Shirakami Mountains also border Akita Prefecture, and that the jurisdiction there belongs to the Kasuga family. Her expression hardens into a cold glare. She asks if he intends to ignore the damage that will inevitably spill over into Akita Prefecture. She states that since the cause is in Aomori Prefecture, she will accept the terms and offer a reward. This means she will be investigating the condition of the newlywed Goki family. Elsewhere, Goki Yashikuni briefs his daughters, Sarah and Cheyenne, along with the exorcist Itsuki. He explains that the contract is for a B-rank yokai investigation originating in Aomori, with a reward of 20 million yen, double the usual rate. He adds that the self-defense force will also be mobilized. Sarah cheerfully addresses her father, asking if she can use her share of the reward to make a designated request for Itsuki's services. He looks at them sternly, questioning the necessity of bringing Itsuki, who is only C-rank qualified, to the front lines. Yashikuni reminds them that their opponent has already killed a B-rank Onmyoji. In response, Sarah simply holds up her phone with a confident smile, suggesting that while his official qualification may be C-rank, his actual abilities are a different story. The device's screen shows footage of Itsuki in the midst of a ferocious battle, unleashing a torrent of dark, powerful energy from his staff. As he watches the display of power, Sarah tells him it's improper for an official Onmyoji to use his own reward money to hire another. Later, as they walk down a corridor, Cheyenne asks her sister what she meant, surprised that Itsuki's name was brought up. Sarah looks away, annoyed, while Cheyenne insists it's not what she thinks. She stops, her expression turning serious. Cheyenne declares that, just like her sister, she wants to be useful to their father. To achieve that, she believes using Itsuki is the best possible choice. Her sister listens, admitting that while she doesn't approve, she can trust Itsuki's skill. She agrees to go along with the plan if that's what Cheyenne truly wants, calling her a good girl. The next day, on the eastern side of the Shirakami line, a light glows from within a cottage nestled in the woods under a full moon. Inside a well-appointed room, Kazuki bows respectfully, expressing his gratitude for the assignment. Seated before him are the key figures of the operation: Goki Yashikuni, the A-rank head of his family, his two B-rank daughters, Sarah and Cheyenne, two other C-rank Onmyoji, and members of the self-defense force standing guard. The tactical plan is laid out. They will divide into 3 search parties. Team A, led by the A-rank Yashikuni, will directly hunt the parent spider yokai. The 2 B-rank teams, led by his daughters, will each hunt a child spider yokai, supported by self-defense force units. High above the forest, Sarah and Cheyenne take flight, their wings spread. Sarah, tasked with aerial reconnaissance and combat support, wonders aloud how many times they will have to tell the C-rank exorcist to stay out of their way and not interfere with the newlywed yokai before he finally understands. Meanwhile, Goki Yashikuni explains to Kasuga Yayoi that they couldn't refuse the client, who uses a Yatagarasu as a familiar. He asks that, in an emergency, she guard the cottage. Yayoi, who admits she came along out of anxiety, nervously agrees. He then turns to a soldier, questioning the wisdom of allocating all of their high-grade protective talismans, provided by Yayoi, to the SDF personnel, as the cost seems to exceed the mission's reward. Mentioning the Goki family's reputation for buying up young C-rank exorcists, he warns that rumors could spread and offers the soldier return. Kazuki, overhearing the exchange, silently reflects that while he certainly wants to be paid what he is owed, creating protective talismans of that caliber is a simple matter for him. Elsewhere, the twins confer. They see this mission as a way to remind Yayoi of the significance of becoming a state on Myoji. For the Goki family, it is an opportunity to report that they have successfully dealt with Yayoi. Yashikuni smirks at Kazuki, remarking that he's quite the smooth operator for a newcomer. Kazuki beams, cheerfully explaining that the talismans were simply a special advance bonus for doing business with Lady Yayoi. Later, he invites Yayoi to join them. Shine suggests that her sister Sarah take a short walk, but Sarah turns away with a pout, declaring that she's going to bed and leaving everything in Yayoi's hands. As the group approaches a wooden cottage, Yayoi remarks that Yashikuni seems to be acting differently from his father. Kazuki confirms her suspicion, explaining that it's mostly for show and that his reputation is largely just that, a reputation. He suddenly remembers something, turning back to present a paper talisman. He explains that it is a special protective charm, just for Sarah. Sarah accepts the charm, her expression puzzled. She asks what he means by this, questioning why she should receive special treatment, even if he is her master. Her eyes widen in shock as she reads the inscription on the talisman. It is designed to detect the vibrations from the spider yokai's threads, a tool specifically for this hunt. As Kazuki turns to leave, he tells her the real work begins tomorrow and that he's just going to scout ahead. Holding the talisman, Sarah realizes the unspoken message. He is going in her stead. She asks with concern if he is truly going alone, knowing they can't ask for help while being monitored. Watching him go, Shine approaches her sister with a questioning look. Sarah explains that Kazuki's power now greatly surpasses her own, and all they can do is trust in him. She simply tells Shine to be careful. Meanwhile, Kazuki ventures deep into the woods. He senses that the ground's key is distorted and the air is unnervingly silent. He realizes this place is different from a typical hellscape and prepares a spell, sensing imminent danger. His paper shikigami, folded into the shape of a crane, suddenly twitches violently, reacting to an unseen force. The shikigami's reaction triggers a horrifying realization. His eyes widen in shock as he understands he has been lured into a trap. He looks down to confirm his fears. He is already standing in the center of the spider yokai's territory, caught within a vast, nearly invisible web that blankets the forest floor. His protective talisman shatters. He realizes with dawning horror that the web was laced with a poison that has been seeping into him, slowly weakening his defenses from the moment he first stepped into the woods. Trapped and poisoned, he refused to yield. With a defiant shout, he invoked a powerful symbol of protection, the Simon pentagram, erupting with spiritual energy. The spider yokai recoiled, realizing her poison was ineffective against his divine power. If she didn't act, she would be exorcised. Her only recourse, she decided, was to bind him with a curse. As she plotted, he continued his incantation, weaving together the fundamental forces of heaven and earth to form a barrier of yin and yang. He commanded the laws of nature to obey his will and become his shikigami, unleashing a torrent of purifying energy. Still unable to discern the creature's true form, he resolved to first bind it with a restraining spell, tightening the ethereal threads of his power. The blinding light faded, revealing that the monstrous creature was gone. In its place stood an elegant woman with a serene smile. The remnants of the web dissolve around her as she completed the binding pact herself, declaring, "My name shall be Suisun." She giggled, cheerfully announcing that she had been bound. It was the first time she had ever encountered an onmyoji of his strength, she admitted with a playful curiosity. Then, her expression turned inquisitive as she asked him why her poison had been completely ineffective. He stared, momentarily speechless. The purity of her human transformation was astonishingly high. He could only wonder about her true identity. She continued, noting how this appearance made it much easier to approach others, a feature she found quite delectable. A wave of realization washed over Kazuki. With her potent curse and sharp intellect, this new shikigami was an adversary of a completely different caliber than any he had ever encountered. Outside the Kagaritsuki cottage, the spider yokai Suisun appears with a cheerful, wide smile. She points to herself and brightly announces that she is Darling's new lover, Suisun-chan. Her declaration is cut short as the sharp, black point of a weapon is pressed firmly against her throat. Her smile freezes, and a bead of sweat rolls down her face. The weapon is held by its Tsuki, but standing beside him is Aoi, whose eyes glow with a menacing light. She introduces herself with cold intensity as the master's shikigami, Eikawa Aoi. He glares at Suisun, telling her she brought this upon herself, and sternly commands her to introduce herself properly. The spider yokai looks on in wide-eyed shock. Her expression instantly shifts to one of tearful panic. Waving her hands placatingly, she introduces herself as the shikigami, Suisun, and asks them to please take care of her. Itsuki lowers his weapon and turns to Aoi, explaining that Suisun has undergone a deification ritual, binding her to his command. He warns Aoi that Suisun is now a mountain goddess, a being whose lineage is far superior to Aoi's own, and that she stands no chance in a fight. He orders her not to defy Suisun, and Aoi meekly agrees. He then directs his attention back to Suisun, holding up a paper talisman and questioning her as per his orders. He asks if she was the one monitoring the cottage. Suisun confirms this, explaining that since the area is her territory, she can no longer hear their voices. Itsuki presses further, noting that she broke his C-rank protective ward, meaning her power greatly exceeds its original strength. He demands to know why. Aoi points at Suisun, asking if she is close to the mountain goddess, speculating that she must possess the bloodline of a god. With a sly smile, Suisun reveals that her father is a great demon. The revelation stuns Itsuki, who realizes this means she is an A-rank, high-class demon, a member of the upper echelons of the demon world. Suisun elaborates on her lineage. For generations, the Kasumi family served the gods, but the head of the family, a powerful demon with 150 subordinates, was eventually defeated in a great battle. The remnants of her clan, along with the gods they once fought, were absorbed by the Demon King. She declares that she and her sisters will inherit all of that power and bloodline. She casually reminds Itsuki that she and her kind possess poison and are adept at setting traps, asking her new darling if he understands. In response, he holds up a glowing talisman, demanding she tell him everything she knows about her own strengths and characteristics. The spider yokai then turns her attention to Aoi, explaining that the device in question is a wireless machine. She casually mentions that her mother acquired it after eating a man from the self-defense force and warns Aoi against using it, stating it's not meant for humans. Her tone darkens as she elaborates, warning that those like her with strong great demon blood risk tainting their souls if they consume humans, a path that could lead them to hell. She advises them to be careful. He processes this information with wide-eyed shock, questioning her about her mother. Suisun confirms that her mother is also immensely powerful, leading Itsuki to the startling realization that there are two such parent spiders. Later, at the newly established New Bride Subjugation Strategy headquarters, he finishes delivering his report to a council consisting of Goki Yashijiro, Kasugi Yayoi, Sarah, and Shine. Sarah expresses her surprise that the combat support request was fulfilled just a day before the main operation was set to begin. Beside Itsuki, Suisun beams, proudly stating that she has surpassed the client's expectations. The young woman thanks him, hoping for another opportunity to work together. Itsuki smiles, replying that he looks forward to being treated as a valued customer next time. Meanwhile, Goki Yashijiro declares that the units must be reorganized based on this new intelligence. Goki Yashikuni reports that the parent spider is confirmed to be at least B rank, a threat Gishin is currently engaging. He adds that another, newly identified C-rank parent spider and its brood are being dealt with by the self-defense force. Yashijiro then turns his attention to Sarah and Cheyenne, assigning them the task of defending the cottages where the Satori group is staying, an order that visibly startles them. She quickly deduces the shift in strategy. The extermination of the child spiders is no longer the priority. The operation's target is now the parent spider, and a small, elite force will be dispatched to confirm its subjugation before withdrawing. She anticipates this will be the next move. She makes it clear that this is not reconnaissance, but a battle, and that the absolute priority must be protecting human lives. With the plan set, the operation is scheduled to begin at dawn. Elsewhere, at a secluded log cabin, Goki Yashikuni stands on the porch when Kasugi Yayoi steps out, calling his name and carrying 2 steaming mugs. As she joins him, he remarks that they have placed a heavy burden on Sarah and Cheyenne. He muses that while the girls have earned their national qualifications as Onmyuji, the task before them is far beyond what their practical experience would suggest they can handle. She responds, but her words seem directed inward, as if speaking to herself rather than answering him. He watches her, his gaze sharp and questioning. He takes a drink, mulling over the situation. He concedes that being lenient simply because their family is inappropriate, but questions what other choice they have. She looks at him with a faint, knowing smile. She tells him she doesn't believe he is acting out of weakness, and that such sentimentality towards Sarah and Cheyenne is unlike him. At that moment, inside the cabin, Cheyenne sits with her staff, channeling her power through a small, doll-like effigy. This link allows her to perceive events from afar, watching over the very cabin where the conversation unfolds. His expression hardens as understanding dawns. He realizes the twins possess something unique, an ability that could serve as a breakthrough. She confirms his unspoken realization, explaining that the one assisting them is the eldest daughter of the Goki clan. He stood in silence, taking a slow sip from his cup, his gaze fixed on some distant, unseen point. Joining him on the balcony of the log cabin, Kasugi Yayoi asked why her brother was there. She noted that they had miscellaneous tasks to complete before morning and suggested that they should both get some rest, addressing Yashikuni directly and proposing they take a nap. The weight of the impending mission settled over everyone involved. With only 8 hours remaining until the start of the Kakashimbaku subjugation operation, the key players steeled themselves for what was to come. The faces of Kazuki, Aoi, Sarah, Cheyenne, and Yashikuni himself reflected a grim determination, alongside other powerful figures whose roles were yet to be revealed. A car rumbles down a rural road, kicking up dust as it travels along the Shirakami line. In the distance, Mountains rise against a bright sky where birds circle. Inside the vehicle, Itsuki turns to Aoi, who sits beside him in the back seat. With a look of concern, he asks if everyone is all right. His expression hardens as he continues, stating plainly that some damage was unavoidable. He reflects that if he had joined that particular strategy, his Majina curse would have been useless against the overwhelming strength and numbers of the newly born spider yokai, like throwing water on a hot stone. Elsewhere, Sarah comments to Cheyenne that even for the prestigious Goki family, calling in a C rank on Myoji from the outside is a significant risk to take. Itsuki's thoughts drift to the vampiric woman's chilling warning. If the yokai were to eat humans, their souls would be tainted, damning them to an eternity in hell. His reverie is broken when Aoi asks about Sarah, wondering aloud why she would suddenly cling to her master like that. Itsuki looks surprised, admitting that he hadn't considered that. Aoi then recalls a private conversation. The mysterious woman had confided in her at the cottage, revealing that she, too, is a half yokai and that she loves her family dearly. Processing this, Itsuki glances back thoughtfully. He murmurs that Sarah's behavior is indeed a bit unexpected. Aoi looks at him with gentle resolve, saying she just hopes they are safe. He turns back, his own expression determined, and agrees with her. As their car approaches a village nestled against the mountains, a large, dark spider hangs from a web in the foreground, a silent, ominous watcher over the road ahead. The village is under siege. The colossal spider yokai, Sui-san, descends with terrifying speed, her bladed limbs slashing through the air. Below, one of the winged twins, Kaya, lies injured on the ground. Her sister, Mirin, is thrown back by the force of an attack, surrounded by smaller, shadowy spider-like creatures. She quickly recovers, planting her staff firmly before her fallen sister. With grim determination, she declares that while the main force is away, she will defend this place until they return. Mirin grits her teeth, frustrated that a C-rank yokai of this power has appeared. On the ground, Kaya clutches a paper talisman, realizing with despair that she's trying to use Itsuki's protective charm, but she is unable to activate it. From the encroaching darkness, the spider children speak in eerie unison. They announce that everyone has arrived, just as their mother predicted, and that they are hungry. Mirin watches them with disgust as they continue, remarking how delicious the cursed, winged beings look. They debate eating them on the spot, too impatient to wait until their errand is done. Mirin understands then that they are plotting something sinister. One of the children scuttles forward impatiently, urging the others to finish their task so they can finally have their meal. Mirin flinches, bracing for their advance. The situation has worsened. Mirin is now on the ground, her radio lying nearby. Sui-san looms over her, revealing that the twins are trapped within a barrier Itsuki created, and their radio signal has exposed their location. The yokai commands them to give up and die. She glares up defiantly, shouting, "What do you want?" Sui-san and her child mock her, asking what's wrong. They state they only came to run their mother's errand, and question if destroying the radio was truly a wise move. The fallen radio crackles to life. Sui-san's voice emanates from the speaker, instructing the winged ones to let their fathers hear their voices. This, she explains, is the errand from their mother. Both twins stare at the device in horror. Suddenly, a new voice cuts through the static, crying out, "Big sis!" Mirin's eyes widen in utter shock, while Kaya's expression hardens, a grim understanding dawning on her face. She trembled, her mind filled with the horrifying thought that everyone might already be dead, devoured by the spider yokai's mother. Her sister, Kaya, snapped at her, shouting that her shaking was annoying and to pull herself together. In a desperate, unified motion, they both unleashed a powerful blast of energy from their staves, directing it at the unseen enemy before them. The blinding light of their attack illuminated their faces. Kaya's expression was one of grim determination, while her sister's was one of pure shock, tears welling in her eyes as she witnessed the result. As the energy dissipated, the reason for her despair became clear. Standing before them, completely unscathed, was a large, shadowy creature with a featureless white head and a formal black bow tie. The younger twin stared up at the unharmed creature, her eyes wide with absolute terror. Seeing her sister's crumbling resolve, Kaya cried out her name, Cheyenne. She insisted it was no use, as tears streamed down Cheyenne's face in anguish. Meanwhile, in another location entirely, a smartphone began to vibrate intensely. The screen lit up, showing an incoming call from Goki Cheyenne. Inside a moving vehicle, Kazuki answered the call, his expression tense. He held the phone to his ear, his voice urgent as he pleaded, "Please help." In a chaotic forest, Goki Yashikuni strains with all his might, holding back a massive, thorny appendage. Behind him, the winged twin Kaya pleads with him, asking him to lend them his strength. As he holds the line, Kaya cries out in anguish for her father and mother figures. Kasuga Yayoi stands beside her, watching the desperate struggle unfold as a shadowy figure presses its attack. Beside the distressed girl, Kasuga admits that she herself couldn't become a source of strength. She warns Kaya not to let her guard down, explaining that their opponent's true goal is to break their spirit and make them fear the unknown, even with the power they possess. Her words do little to soothe Kaya, who glares forward and shouts that their foe is being far too persistent. From the shadows, the multi-limbed silhouette of Sui-san taunts her, calling her stubborn. She looks back towards Goki Yashikuni, declaring that with Cheyenne and him still fighting without retreat, Suisen must also be struggling to continue the battle. Despite her confident words, a sharp pain strikes her. She clutches her chest, realizing that if she can just push through this moment, it could be the turning point she needs. Overwhelmed, she calls out to her mother figure, Kasuga. Meanwhile, the object of their struggle, Suisen, directs its taunts at Goki Yashikuni, telling him to stay back as his old, tough meat would be hard to chew. In response, he surges forward, unleashing a powerful, energy-charged punch. Far from the forest battle, Itsuki stands by a road and calls out to a man standing by his car. He explains that he has brought an injured person and asks if the man can arrange for transport to the largest nearby hospital. The man readily agrees. His task complete, Itsuki turns to Aoi, who has been waiting quietly, and instructs her to wake up the Yatagarasu chicks. She gives a silent nod of understanding. She approaches a carrier and calls out to the small birds inside, telling them to wake up. The Yatagarasu chicks stir, flapping their wings and letting out sharp cries as they awaken. She listens as Itsuki, clenching his fist with resolve, declares that he will not allow Shine to go to hell either. He then smiles, reassuring Aoi that he has no intention of falling into such a place himself, and promises that he will absolutely return. Their driver, observing the exchange, seems touched by their youthful earnestness. Aoi offers a gentle, relieved smile in return. She bows her head, wishing him a safe journey. With one of the Yatagarasu chicks perched on his shoulder, Itsuki examines a paper talisman. Holding the talisman high, he shouts an incantation. He leaps into the air, and the small, dark birds take flight all around him. He soars through the sky, accompanied by his flock and an origami bird Shikigami, leaving explosions in his wake on a mountainside below. Meanwhile, the battle against Suisen rages on. The spider yokai looms as Kaya unleashes a torrent of demonic fire from her staff. The attack proves ineffective. Kaya leads the retreat through the woods with her sister and Goki Yashikuni, as Suisen watches with a predatory grin. With blinding speed, the yokai's clawed hand lashes out towards the fleeing group. The blow connects. Kaya cries out her sister's name, Cheyenne, her face contorting in agony as she is struck from behind. As she was struck, a memory surfaced. A young girl, Sarah, thinking of her father and of Cheyenne, a small Yarasa chick, as they stood within the cold, empty halls of a grand building. The memory continued, showing Goki Yashikuni offering a plush toy to Sarah and Cheyenne as a protective charm, an offer Cheyenne gratefully accepted. But in the present, the grim reality persisted. Trapped in Suisen's web, Kaya listened as the yokai taunted her, asking from where it should begin to devour her. The spider yokai elaborated on its cruel intentions, suggesting it would first tear off both her arms and legs, leaving her as a helpless torso. It then asked what it should do next, savoring her fear. Kaya could only grit her teeth and mutter for it to be quiet. Her defiance only amused Suisen. The yokai grabbed her face, its sharp-toothed grin widening as it told her to simply watch as her friends were devoured. It demanded she admit she did not want that to happen. Enraged, Kaya screamed at it to shut up. Her outburst was met with a condescending chuckle. Suisen mocked her, asking if it was so loud that she couldn't hear. It then declared it would do her the favor of making her unable to hear anything at all. With a swift, brutal motion, Suisen's clawed hand shot forward, striking Kaya across the head. The impact was powerful, and her twin sister, Mirin, could only watch in wide-eyed horror. Meanwhile, far from the desperate battle in the forest, Itsuki descended from the sky. Surrounded by the Yatagarasu chicks, he moved with purpose, manipulating dark, ethereal energy. He held a glowing talisman, channeling power into it as his audience. Goki Yashikuni, Kasuga Yayoi, and the winged twins, Kaya and Mirin, watched intently as he prepared his technique. The exorcist drew back a bow formed from pure shadow, knocking an arrow of the same dark substance. Nearby, Aoi stood with her hands clasped and eyes closed, focusing her own energy to aid him. He released the arrow. It flew through the air with a piercing sound before striking the ground, erupting in a burst of dark energy. The arrow of dark energy finds its mark, erupting in a violent blast that engulfs the spider yokai, Suisen. Itsuki watches the impact, realizing with a grim certainty that this is no mere amplification of power. It is a curse he can feel coursing through the attack. The force of the blow tears through Suisen's form. From a safe distance, Aoi's eyes widen in recognition as she identifies the technique as Izanami's. As the devastating energy continues to assault the yokai, a new figure appears, a young girl dressed in spider-themed finery. She cries out in horror, calling Suisen her mother, her shout drawing Itsuki's immediate attention. Suisen's body smolders from the attack, her form grievously wounded as the girl watches from behind. She turns to a grotesque, multi-eyed creature beside her, speaking with unnerving calm. She declares that she is on her darling's side, confident that her mother is strong enough to defeat them. This, she insists, is what her mother truly desires. Her expression hardens into a menacing smirk. She warns the creature that it is merely a monster, and therefore, it should not emerge. The aftermath reveals a colossal, gnarled hand of dark energy pinning Suisen to the ground. Itsuki now stands opposite the spider girl, ready for the next confrontation. Behind him, Aoi tends to the freed Kaya and Mirin. The official record marks the completion of the C-rank subjugation mission. A report details a recent battle. While the unit led by Onmyo Yayoi Kasuga engaged a C-rank parent spider, the head of the Goki family, Yashiki, and A-rank Onmyoji Yashidro single-handedly subjugated a B-rank parent spider of equivalent power. Following the engagement, Goki Yashikuni receives a briefing at the operations headquarters. The report indicates that after he and the self-defense forces subjugated several child spiders, the distribution of the Shirogami line was almost completely annihilated. Kasuga Yayoi continues the report, detailing the condition of his son, a B-rank Onmyoji named Yayoi Issei. He suffered a significant decrease in curse power due to injuries sustained from a C-rank parent spider. While his life is not in danger, his return as an Onmyoji is considered hopeless. The report then turns to C-rank Onmyoji Sarah. Confined to a wheelchair, she has sustained severe paralysis in her right arm and left leg from the parent spider's poison. Compounding her physical injuries, she is also in a state of psychological shock. A representative for Sarah's family explains to Yashikuni that to prioritize saving her life from the poison, an amputation surgery will be performed, pending her or her family's consent. This concludes his report. He then bows low, offering a profuse and desperate apology for the outcome. The man offers 10, then 20 billion as a show of sincerity, but Yashikuni coldly refuses. He states that apologies are not accepted and that he will only take the 20 billion that was initially agreed upon as remuneration. Leaning forward, Yashikuni's tone shifts, becoming menacing. He asks the man what he is trying to say, stating that he has nothing for him. His shadow seems to engulf the room as he delivers a chilling ultimatum. He declares that for crossing the boundary where humans and curses coexist and causing grievous harm, the Onmyoji Association will investigate the matter. His final words are a command. From now on, do not get involved. Visibly shaken, the man turns and departs through the large double doors, leaving the tense silence behind him. In a sterile hospital room, Cheyenne stands vigil at the foot of her sister's bed. Sarah, propped up against her pillows, gazes out the large window. She approaches the bedside. Sarah turns to face her, her right arm completely encased in thick bandages and held in a sling. In her own hands, Cheyenne clutches a small, white, doll-like charm with a black bow tie, which seems to emit a faint warmth. Sarah reveals an identical charm resting on her lap, quietly asking her sister to wait. Overwhelmed, a single tear traces a path down Cheyenne's cheek as she looks away from her injured twin. After a moment, she composes herself, offers a small, respectful bow, and turns to leave the room, walking out into the main corridor. As she proceeds down the hallway, she notices Kazuki and Aoi sitting together on a bench just ahead. She changes her course, walking directly toward them with quiet determination. Stopping in front of Kazuki, she speaks, her voice steady. She tells him that if he hadn't arrived at that moment, the damage they sustained would have been unimaginably worse. Her gaze softens as she looks at him, wanting to express her gratitude directly. She says, simply and sincerely, "Thank you." She hesitates, looking away from Kazuki and Aoi. After a moment, she speaks again, explaining that there is one more thing she needs to address. Turning her back to them, she continues, acknowledging their strength and questioning why they would take on such a task. She admits she doesn't know what the payment for the request is, but her tone implies a deeper concern. Kazuki leans closer, interrupting her train of thought. He states plainly that he has no intention of trying to do anything about Sarah's condition. She looks up, stunned by his declaration. He clarifies his price. As payment, he will ask the revived Sarah to restore him as an Onmyoji. He smiles, explaining that this makes Sarah his benefactor, framing the arrangement as a mutually beneficial exchange. His words strike a chord within her, and tears begin to well up in her eyes, her expression a mixture of relief and gratitude. Aoi observes the moment with a bright smile, noting that Cheyenne has finally come to trust her master. Annoyed but not truly angry, Cheyenne crosses her arms and tells Aoi to stop narrating every little detail. Seizing the opportunity, Kazuki asks Cheyenne to explain Sarah's condition in greater detail now that they are on the same page. Her expression turns grim as she recounts the event. Sarah didn't simply exorcise the monster. In the process, she was afflicted with a curse so powerful that no human could possibly purify the wound. He elaborates on the gravity of the situation. Sarah is currently being kept stable only by a combination of secret medicines from the Goryu and Tengu families, along with a protective charm. However, this is merely a temporary measure. If too much time passes, the curse will inevitably spread throughout her entire body. His explanation was met with a fresh wave of despair from Cheyenne, whose face was streaked with tears. She revealed the horrifying truth. In just a few days, the curse would cause Sarah to lose her hands and feet. Her voice cracked with anguish as she bowed her head, pleading with them to help Sarah just one more time. Aoi called out Cheyenne's name, her expression filled with concern as Kazuki and Sarah looked on. Seeing her distress, Aoi moved to comfort the sobbing Cheyenne. Kazuki turned away from the scene, his back to them as he considered the situation. After a moment of thought, he turned back and laid out his plan. He declared that he would halt the curse's advance, heal Sarah's limbs, and then, in return, she would restore him. He elaborated, explaining that the Morning Star, one of the 3 pillars of Shinrei, is a type of curse that corresponds to healing abilities. His explanation caught the twins' attention. Cheyenne looked up, wiping away a tear, questioning the connection between the curse and a healing ability. She pressed for clarification, her eyes wide with a mixture of hope and confusion as she asked what he meant. In response, he held up a small, folded paper bird. He explained that to find the place they need, he requires Shine's cooperation. At the Yagyu River Dam in Gifu Prefecture, the exorcist Itsuki and his winged companion, Kaya, stand on a paper shikigami overlooking the structure. Kaya asks if this is truly the location they're looking for, mentioning that reports about it have been circulating online. Kaya identifies their targets as a trio of yokai from the first group. She notes that subduing them will be difficult for the two of them, due to a certain trait they possess. She suggests that if they can simply break the yokai cycle, it should be fine, and asks Itsuki to relay this information. Suddenly, two white, weasel-like creatures with flaming tails ambush them. The first, described as the eldest brother, sweeps Itsuki's legs out from under him. Immediately after, the second brother lunges forward, slashing at the fallen exorcist's leg. A third weasel-like creature darts into the fray. This one, the youngest sister, spits a substance from a small pot directly onto the wound on Itsuki's leg, causing him to look down in alarm. As the small creature turns to flee, Kaya launches into the air, calling out for it to wait. She dives and swiftly grabs the fleeing yokai, which squeaks in surprise. She holds the struggling creature fast in her arms. Her action provokes the other two weasels, who stand defensively and roar a warning not to touch their sister. Itsuki looks on, annoyed, questioning why Kaya is getting angry when she was only meant to persuade them, not subdue them by force. Their desperate cries reach a figure standing in the distance. The two weasels call out, "Brother Kazuki!" From the edge of the woods, Kazuki watches the scene unfold, acknowledging that he has no choice but to intervene. He playfully taunts the small weasel creatures, pulling down his eyelid and sticking out his tongue in a silly gesture. The yokai seem to enjoy the game, prancing around it. But that playful memory is a stark contrast to the present. His expression hardens as he confronts Kaya, demanding she get rid of Cheyenne. Kaya, defensive, asks why she is being blamed for such a foolish thing. The confrontation stems from the events just moments before. As Itsuki and Kaya face the weasels, a new figure had suddenly appeared. With a casual apology, a woman adorned with spider motifs unleashed a binding attack, ensnaring one of the creatures. The substance erupts into black flames, engulfing the small yokai. Itsuki shouts for Cheyenne to act now. At that moment, Kaya understands their true intent. The attack on the weasels was merely a distraction to target the sister. Seeing their sibling burning, the other two weasels roar in fury, demanding their opponents cease the cowardly tactics and face them in an honorable fight. Their rage is understandable, as Kazuki explains the truth of the matter. He recounts how reports accuse the weasels of indiscriminately attacking people and animals, but clarifies that this was only half the story. The youngest sibling, he reveals, would always follow behind to apply a healing salve to the wounds. He looks directly at his opponents, his voice low and serious. He offers them a choice. If they all become his shikigami, he will subdue them without a fight. His words hang in the air, but in the present, Kaya holds the youngest weasel protectively. She pleads with its siblings to stop fighting and obey this person. The small creature in her arms looks up, confused, unable to understand what it has done wrong. Her plea turns into a desperate shout, her face contorted with frustration as she yells at the two aggressive weasels to stand down. They question her sudden concern for their sibling. With her eyes cast in shadow, Kaya explains her plea. She needs them to stop their pranks on humans. If they continue, she warns, it will only lead to misery for everyone involved. Her plea to the weasels unanswered, she turns her gaze toward Kazuki, shouting for him to lend her his strength. Below them, two of the small creatures remain poised, their bodies tense and ready for conflict. She then presents the third weasel, the one carrying the pot of salve, challenging that if they have so much power to spare, they should form a contract with her. The creature begins to recite the terms of a pact, speaking of the principles of yin and yang and how the three of them act as one. It offers to become her shikigami if she follows this principle. Realizing what is happening, Kazuki begins an incantation, uttering the words for an emergency order. The incantation continues, speaking of aligning all soldiers as heaven and earth form yin and yang. In an ethereal space, the three weasels reveal their true, more powerful forms. They are named Shinin, the divine slasher, Shinai, the divine turner, and Shinji, the divine healer. With a final hand sign, Kazuki completes the binding command, as swift as the law commands. Beside him, Kaya stands resolute, her wings spread wide in preparation. Her gaze fixed forward with newfound determination. She whispers a promise to the one she fights for. "Sarah, wait for me."